Hi everyone, welcome to Pear Fair. My name is Gary and I'm the Advocates Associate here at Pear Deck. I'm also a former middle school social studies and special education teacher.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacy and I'm an instructional designer here at Pear Deck. I'm also a former middle school history teacher. We are so excited to have you joining us today. It's really hard to believe that it's been 2 years since our very first Pear Fair. Before we begin, we want to take a moment to acknowledge those 2 years and thank and applaud you for all of your incredible work. Your dedication to your students have not gone unnoticed, and our team feels grateful every day to work with educators like you.
You may have seen the hashtag #WhatIsProjectPear going around on Twitter over the summer. We're thrilled to tell you that today, at the end of Pear Fair, you'll get a sneak peek of just that. We're also excited to show you the new learning experience our team has been working so hard on, and to give you a chance to sign up to be the first to learn more.
We hope today you leave feeling inspired with actionable items to bring to your students and teaching.
And now, our keynoter, Weston Kieschnick. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pear Fair. My name is Weston Kieschnick and I am thrilled to be here with you. I know that this is the part of the presentation where I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about myself, but let's be honest about a couple of things. Number one, nobody cares, and number two, we don't have time. So in the interest of time, there's only one thing that you all need to know about me, and that is this. I love teaching. It's a problem. I'll tell you this, I love teaching so much. I was a high school teacher for a number of years. I write books on teaching. I host a podcast on teaching. I love teaching so much. I also married a teacher, which means my kids are going to grow up to be resentful, no doubt, 100% resentful, but we're going to power through. One of the great gifts that I get to receive as a result of this, weird and wonderful job that I get to do now, where I travel around the country and I get to peek in on teachers around the country and around the world, is I get to see some of the incredible things that are happening in the nooks and crannies of our country and around the world, where teachers are doing incredible things on behalf of kids in the classroom. So I'll tell you this, I popped into a 6th grade math classroom a while back. 6th grade math classroom to do an observation. And I'm walking into the back of this classroom with all the kids, and as I'm walking into the back of this classroom with all the kids, I see the teacher, and she is sitting there on a stool at the front of the room, just like this one, and she is holding a banana up in the air. She obviously wants the kids to see it. So let's just acknowledge first and foremost that this is already a risky move in a 6th grade classroom. Middle school teachers will back me up on this. So kids are walking into the classroom, she's holding up this banana, and so of course, all of the kids are coming in, and what do you think they're asking? They're all like, Miss, what are you doing with the banana? Miss, what's with the banana? One after the other. They're all asking the same question, and she is answering 0 of their questions. She's sitting there silently, and she is holding this banana, which, as you can imagine, only increases their fury. And so more kids are pouring into the classroom. I take my seat at the back because I'm like, I gotta know where she's going with this. More kids are coming in, more kids, Miss, what are you doing with that banana? She's not answering any of our questions. And the volume reaches its peak, and right about that time, the bell rings. And when the bell rings, this teacher speaks her first words. She looks at her class and says, all right, quiet down, everyone. How fast do you think you could eat this entire banana? Room erupts, right? Kids are throwing out times, and because every kid has to be heard, a bunch of them are like, we don't even like bananas. And so it's absolute bedlam. So she says, okay, quiet down. She says, let me ask it this way. She says, how many of you, by show of hands, think you could eat this entire banana in 60 seconds or less? Bunch of hands go up. And she starts to whittle it down. 50 seconds, 40 seconds, 30 seconds. Hands are going down. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, she gets down to 2 boys in this classroom who are arguing back and forth about how fast they can eat this banana. Well, as they're arguing, one of them says to this teacher, he says, Miss, I think I can eat that banana in 7 seconds. She says, you think you can eat this entire banana in 7 seconds? Kid says yes. And I look around and I can tell all the kids are thinking exactly what I'm thinking, which is, please God, let this kid try to eat this banana in 7 seconds. So she stands up and she says, okay, everyone welcome him to the front of the room. Kid's name was James. She says, everyone welcome James to the front of the room. She stands up, James takes the hot seat, and she hands him the banana. And then she pulls out her phone and says, here's how this is gonna go. I'm gonna say, on your mark, get set, and go. And on go, I'm gonna push start on my timer, and you have 7 seconds to eat that entire banana. Kids are all standing up. They're craning their necks around the room. Frankly, I'm standing up. I'm pulling my phone out, turning on the video. I'm like, I gotta get. She says, on your mark, and the kid starts to peel the banana. And when the kid starts to peel the banana, she looks at him and says, whoa, whoa, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm peeling this banana. So when you say go, I'm gonna eat it in 7 seconds. And she looks at him and says, that's not what I asked. She said, I asked, how fast can you eat that entire banana? And right in that moment, the kid starts to have the exact realization that you are having right now, which is that she means the entire banana, peel and everything. And so now all of a sudden the kid starts freaking out. He's like, that's not what you said. And now, of course, all of the kids have been paying abundant attention. They're like, yep, that's what she said. We all heard it, And he's like, no, let me peel it first, then I could eat it in 7 seconds. She says to him, okay, so you tell me if you peel this banana first, then you could eat the inside of it in 7 seconds. Kid says yes. She looks at him and says, Okay, so what you're telling me is the order in which you do this matters. Kid says yes. She looks at the class and says, so we can all agree order matters, boom. And that's how she started her lesson on order of operations that day. That's a hell of a teacher. I think we can all agree that's a hell of a teacher. I mean, think about how you learned order of operations, right? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. A bunch of the math people out there are just like, Kishnik, don't take that from me. Relax, that's fine. But I mean, so think about it this way too. Well, PEMDAS, what does the P in PEMDAS stand for? Parentheses, which kind of looks like what piece of fruit? A banana, which she revisited later. It was amazing. The whole thing was incredible. And I couldn't help but be struck by this thought. I thought to myself, like, man, look at how that teacher just started that lesson. And I want you to ask yourself right now, how is how she started that lesson different from if she had walked to the front of the room and said, good morning, class. Today we're going to talk about order of operations. The answer is really simple. One of those starts is profoundly engaging and the other is not. My friends, we have to talk about engagement. We have an engagement crisis in America's schools right now. And I'll tell you what, if we're going to talk about engagement, we have to be really, really clear about what we're talking about. Engagement is a word that is used in education all the time. People tell us to be more engaging all the time. The hard part is we ask, like, how? It's like, well, I don't know how to be more engaging, but you should be more engaging. We use this word in education all the time. So let's develop some clarity about what we're even talking about when we talk about engagement. So first and foremost, if we're going to talk about it, we have to understand what it is. Here's how I define engagement. Too many people use the word engagement and fun as though they are synonyms. They are not. Let me be clear. I have no interest in helping you all become the fun teacher. We are not in the business of edutainment, nor are we held accountable to fun. I do, however, have abundant interest in helping people become more engaging teachers. And if we're going to be serious about engagement, we have to understand what we mean. Here's how I define engagement. I define engagement as curiosity, participation, and the desire to persevere. If those three things are present, then we know kids are engaged. If kids are curious, if they are participating, and if they have a desire to persevere regardless of the level of rigor in the task, we know that kids are engaged. And if we're going to be serious about engagement, we also have to be serious about the science of how teaching and learning even works. Math people out there, when you see these two symbols, what do you think of? Yes, most of you normal people are like greater than and less than. There's always the high school teacher out there who's like inequalities. Congratulations, you're smarter than we are. Well done. There's always the elementary teacher who's like, the alligator eats the bigger number. However you choose to think about this is entirely up to you. But for the time being, I want you to think about this as greater than and less than. Here's why. If we're going to teach kids anything, there are two things that we have to consider. Number one is the perceived level of difficulty of a task, and number two is a child's desire to participate. And here's what we know to be true. When the perceived level of difficulty of a task is great, we know that a child's desire to participate is less. Conversely, we know that a child's desire to participate is great when the perceived level of difficulty of a task is less. My friends, this is where resistance lives, and this is where engagement lives. I'll tell you this, if we're going to engage kids, we have to understand that kids disengage from us when things seem too difficult. Why is that? Is it because kids are afraid of difficult things? Is it because kids are afraid of failure? No. Hear me clearly. Kids are not afraid of failure. You know what they're afraid of? Humiliation. If you don't believe me, go watch a kid play video games. They will try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. Go watch a kid learn how to skateboard. They will try and fail and try and fail. Kids are not afraid of failure, they're afraid of humiliation. And so if that's the case, how do we account for that? What do we need to understand about kids? What do we need to understand about engagement? First and foremost, let's understand that curiosity is a prerequisite to engagement. Curiosity is a prerequisite to engagement. It has to come first. Here's the beautiful news. There is nothing you have to do to cultivate curiosity in your classroom. Zero. Kids bring it with them every single day. Kids walk into your classroom with curiosity every single day, and they give you evidence of it. Kids walk into our classrooms, they give us evidence of that curiosity every day. You know how we know this to be true? Because they ask us the same stupid question every single day. Hey, what are we doing today? Or my favorite is a high school teacher, Kishnik, we doing anything today? Holy hell, like what a great idea. I hadn't even thought of doing something today. What an awesome plan. Okay? Kids walk in, think about it. Kids walk in with curiosity every single day. And what do we do with that curiosity 9 times out of 10? We squash it. We blow it. We blow the punchline of our own joke with this phrase right here. Good morning, class. Today we are going to insert boring thing here. Or worse, good morning, class. Today we are going to insert thing you don't care about here. Or even worse than that, good morning, class. Today we are going to insert perceptively difficult thing here. And we lose engagement before we've had a chance to even capture it. And so I'll tell you, guys, again, we are blowing the punchline of our own joke before we've had a chance to tell it. So my daughter Charlotte is 11 years old right now. She loves jokes. I guarantee if you were to meet my daughter Charlotte right now, within 5 minutes of meeting her, she would tell you her favorite joke. I'm going to tell you my daughter's favorite joke. It's about Winnie the Pooh. Here it is. What's brown and smells like honey? Winnie's Pooh. Whatever. She's 11, right? That's her favorite joke. But I ruined that joke for you. I ruined it. How? Because I stood right here and I said, I'm going to tell you my daughter's favorite joke about Winnie the Pooh. And I blew the punchline of that joke before I had a chance to tell it. We do this in classrooms every day with this phrase. I am begging you, want to be instantly more engaging on behalf of your kids this year? Please omit this phrase from your teaching vocabulary. It does not serve you, nor does it serve our children. Now, let me pause, because do you hear that? That's the whispers of a bunch of teachers around the country and around the world whispering to themselves, but what about those learning outcomes that we have to have written on the board? Yes, do kids need to know the learning outcome for the day? Absolutely. Put eyes on me and hear me clearly. Nobody said, not once, not ever, that we had to reveal those learning outcomes in the first 12 seconds. And anyone who doesn't understand why we have those learning outcomes on the board to begin with. Omit this phrase from your teaching vocabulary because engagement matters. It's not just fluff, it's a cornerstone. Here's what we have to understand about engagement. Here's what we know. Engagement increases student satisfaction. We know that engagement enhances student motivation to learn, and we know that engagement reduces feelings of isolation. This is important now more than ever. Our kids are more connected than they've ever been in human history, and yet they feel more isolated than ever before. And we know that engagement improves student academic performance in almost every single academic category. Engagement matters. And so ask yourself, how am I doing? How am I doing at engaging kids? Don't answer out loud. Surveys were done across 36 states, including the 10 largest districts in America. And here's how this survey went. Teachers were given a list of adjectives, and they were asked to identify from this list of adjectives, hey, what are the top 3 adjectives that describe how you feel when you are teaching on any given day? A bunch of you at home right now are like, no problem, where is tired on that list? I will circle it twice. Wasn't on this list, for the record, right? Doesn't nullify the tired that we feel. But teachers were asked to identify the top 3 adjectives that described how they felt when they were teaching on any given day. Guess what the most frequently given adjective was? Engaging. If you ask most teachers around the country and around the world, guess what they'll tell you? That they're engaging. I wonder what kids would say. Wonder no more. Nearly 1 million of them were surveyed nationwide. Nearly 1 million kids, grades 5 through 12, were asked a fundamental question. Do you have an engaging teacher? And in 5th grade, 75% of kids said yes. By 6th grade, that number falls to 67%. By 7th grade, only 55% of kids report that they have an engaging teacher. By 8th grade, that number's down to 45%. It falls again in 9th grade, and by 10th grade, only 33% of kids say they have an engaging teacher. By 11th grade, that number falls to 32%, and good news, everyone, we get a little bump in 12th grade, and 34% of kids say that they have an engaging teacher. Why do you think they get that little bump? Well, because they're leaving and they're excited about it. Now, pause for just a moment, because this is where I need to have a come to Jesus with my elementary counterparts who are out there, because some of you right now are looking at this data and you're thinking, well, I don't know what the hell they're doing in elementary or in high school, but we are crushing it in elementary school. First off, 75%, not exactly crushing it. Second, this data is way more complex than it seems. This is not a simple case of like, hey, there's a group doing a good job and there's a group not doing a good job. This data is way more complex than it seems. There are reasons why we see decreases in engagement over time. Think about it. What do kids start to go through in about 5th, 6th, 7th grade? Puberty. Let's talk about it. Not at depth, but let's dance around it for a second. So let's talk about it. If you've got a child who walks into your classroom as a 5th, 6th, 7th grader, and they feel uncomfortable in their own skin, their bodies are changing, their voices are changing, and they don't understand a lot of these changes, ask yourself, is that child going to be easy to engage or more difficult? Profoundly more difficult. Now, also, think about, what do kids start to enter into in about 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade? Relationships with one another. And if you have a 7th grade girl who walks into your classroom and she's devastated because she just broke up with her boyfriend for the 11th time that week, and she was pretty sure he was the one, ask yourself, is that young lady going to be easy to engage or more difficult? Profoundly more difficult. Also, ask any middle school teacher you know. That scenario that I just gave you is not hypothetical, it is real. That is our reality. Also, what do parents start to buy their children in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade? Cell phones. My friends, if your cell phone was a boyfriend or girlfriend, you would break up with it immediately. It is so damn needy. Imagine you went to a movie with a person you're dating, and at that movie, that person every few minutes keeps tapping you on the leg saying, "Look at me. No, seriously, look at me. No, seriously, I want attention." You'd get up and walk out. It's what your phone is doing right now. It is tapping you on the leg, or for you back pocket phone people, I don't understand you, but it is tapping you on the butt and saying like, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. I want attention." And now imagine you're a classroom teacher and all of your kids have those in their pockets and they are constantly being tapped and said, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me." Those kids are going to be profoundly more difficult to engage. So here's what we have to understand. Are we going to see decreases in engagement over time? Yes, it's unavoidable. Now, come to Jesus moment for secondary folks. Does that excuse the massive decrease in engagement that we see? No. Here's why. Think about how many teachers your average elementary school kiddo sees in a given day. It's 2. It's typically their classroom teacher and like a specials teacher. Now think about how many teachers your average high school kid sees in a given day. It's 6, 7, in some places as many as 8 or 9. So when you ask an elementary school kiddo, do you have an engaging teacher? You got like a 1 in 2 shot. But when you ask a high school kid, do you have an engaging teacher? You have a 1 in 7, 8, or 9 shot. And so the fact of the matter is, are we going to see decreases in engagement? Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't excuse the cliff that we fall off of. Here's what we have to understand about engagement. Hold up both of your hands like this and understand this very clearly. Engagement is a function of teaching methodology and student disposition. Engagement is a function of teaching methodology and student disposition. Take a look at those 2 hands and ask yourself, which of those things do we have control over? Only one. We have only control over teaching methodology. We have 0 control over student disposition. So what does that mean for us? That means you need to absolve yourself of the notion that you are going to be able to engage 100% of your kids 100% of the time. If you can engage 100% of your kids 100% of the time, you are not a teacher, you are a wizard. Okay? So absolve yourself of the notion that you can engage 100% of your kids 100% of the time. However, what we understand is that our teaching methodology has to get a whole lot better. It has to. Because engagement matters, and we've been throwing misguided solutions at this problem for a really, really long time. Take a look at these 2 pictures here real quick and ask yourself, how many of you out there either went to school, taught in a school, or currently teach in a school that looks like one of these? A school that lacks exterior-facing windows. Let me save you a ton of travel. I've worked with teachers and school leaders from every single state in this country and more than 30 countries around the world, and I can tell you I have seen thousands of schools that look just like this. Schools that lack exterior-facing windows. Just so you know, this is a misguided solution to the problem of engagement. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, a new technology emerged in our schools. You know what it was? No, not overhead projectors. It was air conditioning. Air conditioning emerged, and overnight, this presented a new problem for facilities managers because overnight, our school buildings became very, very expensive to both heat and cool. And so what happened was facilities managers were looking at places in their buildings where they were losing energy efficiency. Guess where the first place they looked was? The windows. Now, round about the same time, educational researchers and experts got together and were talking about the problem of engagement. This is not a new problem. And as they were talking about the problem of engagement, they were going around to classrooms and making observations of the number of students who were disengaged from learning. Guess what evidence they were collecting as evidence that students were disengaged from learning? They were noting the number of children who were looking out the window. So what happened? Educational experts and facilities managers got together and said, we can solve both of these problems. And they took the windows out of our schools. My friends, I have two fundamental problems with this. Number one, if you can't be more engaging than a window, we have to have a completely different conversation. That's number one. Number two, this is evidence of a thing we do. Rather than investing in the root cause of the problem and solving the root cause of the problem, we try to throw external solutions at the problem. My friends, external solutions are never going to solve the problem of engagement. They'll be part of that solution, but they are not the entirety of that solution. Think about it, it's happening right now. What's the new solution that people are trying to throw at the problem of engagement? It's technology. Technology will not solve the problem of engagement on its own. It just won't. Pear Deck's amazing. Pear Deck on its own will not solve the problem of engagement. However, great teachers who understand how and when to use technology to support great educational strategies to make them more effective and efficient than they've ever been before will absolutely solve the problem of engagement. So how do we solve this problem? Quick question. I'm about to show you 5 songs by 5 different artists from 5 very different periods of time. And I want you to ask yourself real quick, what did the song When Doves Cry by Prince, God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, Respect by Aretha Franklin, Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, and Single Ladies by Beyonce all have in common? Take a look at all of those songs. They are all wildly different. They are all from different time periods and different genres, and yet they all have something very, very important in common. I'll tell you what it is. Not long ago, Rolling Stone magazine did this really interesting nationwide survey. And Rolling Stone, when they were doing these surveys, they surveyed people across America, and they were trying to identify the top 50 most recognizable, most beloved, and most iconic songs of all time. So after Rolling Stone did these surveys and found the top 50 most recognizable, beloved, and iconic songs of all time, they put out their results. And you should know, all 5 of these songs are on that list. Now, I'm not super interested in Rolling Stone's list of the top 50 most recognizable, beloved, and iconic songs of all time. I'm super interested in what happened after Rolling Stone put out that list. Because after Rolling Stone put out that list, researchers at Columbia University did this really interesting study. They took a look at all of these songs and they asked themselves this question: is there a formula to writing a hit song? And guess what they discovered? There is. Researchers at Columbia found that every single song on that list of Rolling Stone's top 50 most recognizable, beloved, and iconic songs of all time followed this exact format. There's an intro, the first verse, the chorus, the second verse, the chorus. The song will take us to the bridge, the chorus will come around again, and the song ends. Every single song follows this exact formula. Furthermore, researchers also discovered that almost every single song on that list had an average tempo of around 120 beats per minute, averaged out at about 500 beats per song, and only had between 6 and 8 chord changes. Every single one. Why do I share this information with you? Because if we're going to talk about engagement, let's talk about those places in our lives where we seek out engagement. Seek out opportunities to be curious and participate and persevere. Where do you seek out opportunities to be engaged? It's typically in the music that we listen to, the movies and the television that we watch, the books that we read, the stories and the jokes that we're told. And I need you to understand something. Engagement is formulaic. Take a look at these 5 movies. These 5 movies also have something in common. Some of you who teach high school English language arts know immediately what these 5 movies have in common. Every single one of these movies follows the hero's journey. Every single one. If you're not familiar with the hero's journey, it will begin with an introduction to the protagonist's world and then a call to action. There will be a moment where our hero crosses the threshold and then an opportunity for a mentor to teach the lead. So think about a movie like Star Wars. Who's the mentor? It's Obi-Wan. Think about who becomes the mentor after that. It's Yoda. Think about a movie like Harry Potter. Who's the mentor in Harry Potter? It's Dumbledore. Okay? There will be an opportunity for the mentor to teach the lead. There will be a first challenge, a temptation, a dark moment, a final conflict, and then a moment where our hero returns home. Every single one of these movies and thousands of others follows the hero's journey. Why do I share this information with you? Because I need you to understand that engagement is formulaic. How many of you are familiar with Freytag's pyramid? Probably a handful. How many of you have ever seen a Disney movie before? Probably more. Every Disney movie you've ever seen follows Freytag's pyramid. Every single one. Let's take this one. Every single Disney movie, spoiler alerts, by the way, every single Disney movie starts with exposition. Think about the exposition that's happening in the opening scenes of The Lion King. Mufasa is explaining to Simba, everything the light touches will be yours one day. That's just exposition. And then there's an inciting incident. Some of you just went, "Aw." Yes, it's very sad when the artist stops drawing one of the characters, which is what you just said "aw" for. There's an inciting incident, the stampede. Mufasa's about to be killed. That's the inciting incident. And then there will be a rising action. Hakuna Matata. Everything's going to be totally fine. Simba's going to leave the Pride Lands. He's going to become friends with Timon and Pumbaa, and everyone's going to live happily ever after. We know that that's not how this movie is going to end. We know that this rising action is leading to a climax. What is the climactic moment in The Lion King? It is the final face-off between Simba and Scar. And then there will be a falling action. I'm about to blow your mind right here. There's about to be a falling action. Think about The Lion King. What is the falling action? Scar literally falls into the pit with the hyenas. Ready? I'm going to blow your mind. How many of you have seen Beauty and the Beast? What happens to Gaston at the end of Beauty and the Beast? He falls. What about the movie Tangled? What happens to Mother Gothel at the end of Tangled? She falls. I'll go back even farther. Snow White. What happens to the witch at the end of Snow White? She falls. They don't even hide it. It's been right there in front of you the whole time. And then last but not least, every Disney movie will end with a resolution. And the circle of life continues. Every single Disney movie you have ever seen follows Freytag's pyramid. Why do I share this? Because I need you to understand that engagement is formulaic. How many of you have been on a flight recently? If you have, you know that it sucks. So let's talk about it real quick. One of the few good things about modern air travel is in-flight Wi-Fi. One of the few good things about modern air travel. And so I'll tell you this. I was on a flight not too long ago from Los Angeles to New York. It's about a 6-hour flight. And I was dreading it, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a bunch of work done while I'm on this flight. So we got to a cruising altitude. I open up my laptop, and guess what I discover? Wi-Fi's down. Now, because I fly so often, I know that if the Wi-Fi is ever down on a flight that you're on, all they have to do is typically the same thing you do at home. You turn it off, you turn it back on, it'll reboot and pop right back on. I know this because I fly all the time. Now, I pressed my call button, flight attendant came back, and I need you to know I was as nice as humanly possible. Flight attendant comes back and I said, hey, I noticed the Wi-Fi was down. When you get a second, would you mind just trying to reset it from the front of the plane? And the flight attendant looks at me and says, pretend like it's the olden days, turns my call button off, and walks away. So I lit up a cigarette. I was like, okay, I'll pretend like it's the olden days. And she comes running to the back of the plane, and she is furious. And she says, sir, that is illegal. And I said, well, pretend like it's not. Now, pause for just a moment, and I need you to recognize that that's a joke. That did not actually happen. I need you to recognize that that's a joke. I'm not the guy lighting up cigarettes on domestic flights. If that's a joke, why did I tell it to you? Because I need you to understand every joke that you've heard follows a very, very similar format. Every joke that you've heard will begin with a setup. Think about the setup for that joke. Anyone been on a flight recently? That's just a setup. And then you'll develop an assumption about where I'm taking that story. I don't care what the assumption is, because there's a moment where your assumption is going to be shattered. Think about the moment where your assumption was shattered in that joke. It's the moment when the flight attendant turns off my call button and says, pretend like it's the olden days. Assumption shattered. And then bam, punchline, so I lit up a cigarette. Every joke you've heard, those songs you love, that Disney movie you watched, I need you to understand that engagement is formulaic. So what does that mean for us? I'll tell you this, I've spent the last 15 years trying to figure out what it is that engaging educators do differently. People tell us to be more engaging all the time, but what's our version of Freytag's pyramid? If we know that engagement is formulaic, what's our version of a really great song structure? If we know that engagement is formulaic, then my friends, what's our version of the hero's journey? And after 15 years, I'll tell you, and thousands upon thousands of observations, here's what it is. Here's what engaging teachers do differently. I affectionately refer to it as the Atlas model, and I share these things with you because I need you to understand, let me back up. I'll tell you this. I get reluctant to even tell people the banana story. You know why? Because I tell people the banana story, and they'll have one of two reactions. The first one is always similar. We always see the banana story and we're like, wow, what an incredible teacher. And then the second one either happens in here or out loud. The second part of that is people will look at that example of that amazing teacher and say, wow, I'd love to do something like that. Too bad I'm just not that creative. And we'll absolve ourselves of the responsibility for engagement by saying that we're not creative. And what I need you to understand is that creative people aren't doing things that nobody has ever done before. They're doing things lots of people have done before, things that you can do right now. But what's our version of the hero's journey? Here it is. It's the Educator's Atlas. Here's what great educators who are masters at engagement do differently. Atlas is just an acronym for what they do. The first thing they do is this, attention. They walk in and they capture and hold student attention. Here's the good news. Stop racking your brains. There's only 5 ways to do this. There's only 5 ways to begin by capturing and holding attention. You can begin with an enrolling question, a story, videos, mnemonics, games, or challenges. That's it. That's it. Also, notice what the first one says. It says enrolling questions. It does not say essential questions. I can't tell you the number of classes I've seen begin with essential questions that are rarely essential, nor are they very good questions. Furthermore, think about what is the difference between an enrolling question and an essential question. Enrolling questions are about kids, and essential questions are about content. And if we're going to be about kids, then the start of the class should be about kids. And we have to figure out which one of these things we do best. Which one of these things best suits you and what you do and your gifts as a teacher? Step number 1, attention. Step number 2, transition. Engaging teachers are masters of the transitional phrase. Think about the banana example. These are phrases that are typically repeated for emphasis because we want them to be remembered. So think about the banana teacher. She said flat out, she was like, hey, so you're telling me the order in which you do this matters. And then she looked at the class and says, so we can all agree order matters. Because what does she want them to remember? Order matters, order matters, order matters. Great speakers have been doing this for a long time. It's been right in front of you. I have a dream. You know how many times he says that in that speech? 8 times. Why? Because if it's repeated, it's remembered. Think about John F. Kennedy's most famous speech. Ask not what your country can do for you. He says it multiple times. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask not what America can do for you. Think about Winston Churchill's most famous speech. We will fight, we will fight, we will fight, we will fight. What's repeated gets remembered. Be a master of the transitional phrase. Also recognize that a transitional phrase is a link from your attention getter to the lesson that you want to teach kids. And we got to think about how we're going to deliver that lesson. What's the methodology? We're never going to coach lecture out of our nation's schools. Never going to do it. But we have to acknowledge that there are also other delivery methodologies when we have to transfer knowledge from us to kids. We have to ask ourselves, how are we going to do it? Is it going to be a lecture? Is it going to be a podcast? Is it going to be a repeated read or a piece of video content? What will it be? Capture and hold student attention. Be a master of the transitional phrase. Teach a clear and concise lesson. And then there has to be an activity. My friends, there has to be a doing thing. It will never be enough just to lay information at a child's feet. There has to be a doing thing. What are kids going to do with this information once they have it? Are they going to create a concept map or a mind map? Are they going to answer questions or prompts for feedback that teacher can then use to inform their instruction? Are they going to engage in a Socratic seminar or do some sort of jigsaw activity? What will kids do? How are we to use these digital tools so that kids can get their heads and hands around this content in ways that weren't possible before? What's the doing thing? And then last but not least, summation. Notice what that doesn't say. It doesn't say summative assessment. It says summation. Put eyes on me and hear me clearly. Learning is sticky when it is tied to emotion. And we have to ask ourselves, what's the feeling kids are going to feel as they walk out the door? Think about your most memorable life experiences. There are moments when you felt joy, when you felt excitement, when you felt sadness. Learning is sticky when it's tied to emotion. And if we're going to be serious about engagement, we have to understand that. I'll tell you, the most engaging man I've ever met is my father. My dad's the most amazing and engaging guy I've ever met. And he used to say this to me all the time when I was a kid. He used to say to me, when you don't listen, you feel, and if you don't feel, you won't listen. He used to say this to me all the time. And I'll tell you this, me and my buddies used to do this thing when we were kids where during the summer months and the warm months of the school year, we would hop on our bikes, me and my 3 buddies, and we would ride up to the grocery store and we would buy baseball cards with money that we had made mowing people's lawns. And then after we bought those baseball cards, we would ride over to Blockbuster Video, ditch our bikes, run inside, rent a movie, and then we would ride our bikes with those baseball cards to somebody's house, and we would sit around and we would trade baseball cards and we would watch movies. And we would do this almost every day when it was warm out. And I recognize that this is a very old-fashioned story, because in this story, kids are outside. Now, we would do this all the time, and every time I would get back, my dad would always ask me the exact same question. I would get back and he'd be like, hey, when you were at Blockbuster, did you lock up your bike? He would ask me this all the time. You'd have thought my bike was worth $10,000. It was not. Also, I lived in rural Iowa. And do you remember Blockbuster Video? Like, there's a limited number of movies in there. I never locked up my bike. We'd ghost ride those things beside the building. We'd run inside and rent a movie. I never locked up my bike. But every time I would come home and my dad would ask me, did you lock your bike? And what do you think I told him? Yes, of course, yes, Dad. I always lock up my bike. Yes, liar, straight up lie, lied. So one day school year started. Me and my friends do what we did over the weekend. We ride up, we buy baseball cards, we go over, ditch our bikes, run into Blockbuster, we come out, all 4 of our bikes gone. And so me and my buddies start making the long, lonely walk home. And I don't know if you ever had that friend who, if you got in trouble with that friend, you knew that they were always in way more trouble than the rest of you. Yeah, I was that guy. So we're walking home, and my friends are like, oh man, Kishnik. And I'm like, yep, this is how murders happen. See you never, you know? And I walked into my house. My dad's sitting there, and I said, Dad, there's something I need to tell you. I was like, when I was at Blockbuster, my bike got stolen, and he was furious. Like, that was a big deal. My bike was how I got to school, and I lived miles away from school. And he was like, well, I don't know what you're going to do. Like, you're going to have to walk. And my dad worked 12, so he was gone 6 in the morning to 6 at night. My mom worked at a bank. She had to be there to open up the bank in the morning. And so there was nobody to take me to school. And he was like, I don't know what you're going to do. You're going to have to walk. And then he asked me, he said, when you were at Blockbuster, did you lock up that bike? And guess what I told him? Yes, of course, yes. I always lock up my bike. Yes. Lied, leaned hard into that lie. And he was like, well, I don't know what you're going to do. You're going to have to walk. And that's what I did for the next 3 days. I walked to school and home, to school and home, to school and home, miles. And if you love humidity and bugs, you will love Iowa in August. And I come home and I'm covered in sweat and I'm covered in bug bites. And I said, Dad, is there anything I can do to try to earn money to buy a new bike? And he said, yeah, and a storm had just rolled through our neighborhood. So he said, yeah, there's some broken limbs in the tree out in the backyard. He said, I want you to go and I want you to grab the saw from the garage and look up anywhere you see a broken limb. I want you to climb up there, saw down the limb, and drag it out to the curb. I was like, okay, great, sounds safe. So I go get this saw from the garage and I go stand out under this tree in our backyard and I look up and I count 1, 2, 3, 4 bikes up in this tree. And I have the realization that some of you are having, which is not that somebody had stolen my bike, but that my dad had stolen not just my bike, but 3 of my friends' bikes. And then somehow, like a leopard, had dragged them up into this tree. And guys, you don't know humiliation until you've had to get on the phone and call 3 of your friends and ask them to come to your house and help you retrieve not just your bike, but their bike that your dad has stolen just to teach you a lesson. And my friends came over and we dragged those bikes down, and I rolled my bike into the garage and I walked back inside and I sat down in front of my dad, and you know what he said to me? When you don't listen, you feel, and if you don't feel, you won't listen. And he's 100% right. Learning is sticky when it is tied to emotion. Let me tell you this. Do you think I locked up my bike every single day after that? Hell yeah, I did. You could go to my house in Colorado right now, and you will find my bike locked to a wall in a locked garage of my own house. Not because I'm worried someone will come steal my bike. I'm worried my dad will come back and steal my bike just to teach me a lesson. But he understands that learning is sticky when it is tied to emotion. And it's a thing that we have to understand. In and amongst the great work that we're going to do with kids this year and every year after, we have to account for what they feel. And put eyes on me and hear me clearly. It'll be the last thing I say. My friends, the feeling kids feel when they walk into our classrooms cannot be boredom, and the feeling they feel when they leave cannot be failure. If those are the two prevailing emotions, they will forget everything that happens in between. Take a deep breath in and let it out, and I'll leave you with this. First and foremost, let me just say thank you. Thanks for sticking with me for the last 30 or 40 minutes. Thank you for all the work that you're doing on behalf of kids, all the work that you have done on behalf of kids, and all the work that you'll continue to do on behalf of kids. But before we leave here, I have to ask you for a favor. And I know that's odd given all that we've asked of you, but I need to ask you of this favor, and I need you to come through. Put eyes on me. Here's the favor I'm going to ask of you this year. Please, I'm begging you, check in on the people down the hall from you. Check in on the people across from you. Check in on your fellow educators. Check in on your colleagues. I'll tell you what, education is hard. This profession that we love is so hard. It's difficult right now, and we aren't replacing educators at a fast enough rate to afford to lose the ones that we have. And so I'm begging you to check in on each other. And here's the big favor I'm asking of you, and listen to me clearly, please. And I'm going to ask you to come through. Please don't light yourselves on fire to keep everyone else warm. It's not sustainable. There's nothing good that comes at the end of that path. Take care of yourselves. Make sure in the midst of doing this work to take care of other people's kids, make sure you're taking care of your own children. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves. Spend time with people you love. Spend time with people who love you. My friends, you can't fill from an empty vessel. Self-care is not selfish. Take care of yourselves. Thank you all so much. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Weston Kieschnick, and it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope to see you face to face real soon. Take care.
Are you a Pear Deck advocate? Make it official by earning your Inspirational Educator badge or applying to become a Pear Deck certified coach. Earning your Inspirational badge is simple. First, watch a Pear Deck webinar or attend a Pear Deck session at a regional or national conference. Hint, you've already completed step 1 by watching Pear Fair. Second, submit a sample of one of your lessons. Third, present with Pear Deck at least 25 times in one school year. Last but not least, submit your application. Just like that, you will have earned your Inspirational Educator badge. Be sure to be on the lookout for new swag in the mail. After earning your Inspirational Educator badge, level up even more by applying to become a Pear Deck certified coach. Our passionate coaches are trained beyond Pear Deck features and functionality. They're knowledgeable about the pedagogy and learning science behind Pear Deck, best practices, and new features. This fall, we're thrilled to welcome many more amazing coaches from across the nation, and we have even more training cohorts planned for the future. We want to take a moment to shout out everyone who is already an Inspirational Educator or Pear Deck certified coach. Let us know in the chat if you're in the audience today. Thank you for your advocacy. We're grateful for you. You can apply for both of these programs today at the URLs on the next screen.
Welcome and thank you for joining us today at Pear Fair. My name is Stacy and I'm an instructional designer here at Pear Deck. I'm also a former middle school teacher and I'm excited to share with you our growing collection of templates, quick start activities, and ready to teach lessons that are now accessible right from the Content Orchard. With our new library, it's even easier to explore and download hundreds of free, customizable templates created by the Pear Deck team and respected content partners. We've collected all of our pre-made lessons and activities in the Content Orchard, establishing a new home for Pear Deck's content, making pre-made lessons and activities more discoverable by educators. To find the Content Orchard, visit Pear Deck Home and navigate to the top of the page. Let's take a look at what that looks like now. Having all of these lessons in an easy-to-access library is basically a shortcut that saves teachers time when looking for ready-to-use lessons and templates. In this view, you get to see all of the templates and lessons in categories. To see more within the category, click See All. Once you find a deck you'd like to use, it's so easy to select and adapt it to be used in your class. When you click on a deck from the Content Orchard, you are guided to a page that shares more about that specific deck. You also have the opportunity to preview all the slides in the deck from this page before selecting the content. You can either share the deck with another educator or click on the Use Content to copy the deck into Google Slides to then use in Pear Deck. What I love most about our Pear Deck templates is that our content is fully customizable. Our lessons are ready to teach, but as always, you can add, delete, or edit slides to suit your own class. Not only do we have categories such as classroom, community, and celebrations brimming with Pear Deck created templates that focus on topics such as social emotional learning, community, and seasonal celebrations, we also have amazing partnership content that I'd love to share with you. Pear Deck has partnered with trusted organizations to create free, ready-to-teach lessons that promote student engagement, digital citizenship, responsible research, and more. Pear Deck and EIE, the Boston Museum of Science's award-winning curricula division, have teamed up to provide lessons about our effect on climate change and possible solutions. This set of 5 lessons are made in 2 grade bands for grades 3 through 5 and grades 6 through 8. The 5 lessons in this collection are designed by EIE to introduce students with an overview of climate change and 4 effects of climate change: extreme temperatures, extreme precipitation, wildfires and drought, and rising sea level. Pear Deck has partnered with Flip to help educators facilitate effective, interactive, and highly rewarding discussions with their students. Learning is more fun when we do it together. All of these templates have a corresponding topic in the Flip Discovery Library. Create your topic in Flip, add it to this ready-to-use template, and start having more engaging conversations in your classroom today. Knowing the basics of good digital citizenship is essential for today's kids. That's why we've teamed up with Google's Be Internet Awesome, a free digital citizenship curriculum with everything teachers need to help kids learn to be safe, more confident explorers of the online world. These custom interactive presentations are designed for use in the classroom. Each presentation provides teachers with a simple way to introduce a concept related to digital literacy and guide students through related activities. These lessons are also in Spanish. Newsella and Pear Deck have teamed up to create daily decks designed to spark student engagement. Each one features an adaptive news article with interactive prompts to get every student learning. These daily decks will help you explore news topics with your class while working on literacy, critical thinking skills, and building classroom community. Each article has been curated by Newsella's expert team and paired with proven instructional strategies to help your students dive deeper with the lessons and prompt classroom conversations. With news articles published every day, there's never a limit on how much you can explore. We've teamed up with PBS NewsHour Classroom to bring you free lessons on the effects affecting our world today. Each week, you'll find a deck made for middle school and high school learners on a current events topic, complete with thought-provoking interactive questions and embedded videos from reliable sources. Pear Deck has partnered with Facing History and ourselves to help build community and trust within classrooms. With these interactive lessons, educators can foster a sense of belonging and prioritize social-emotional learning from the first day of school. The opening days and weeks of school are an important time for building community and focusing on students' social-emotional learning. This collection of activities address 3 important goals for the beginning of the school year: reorienting students to school, getting to know each other and building relationships, and creating classroom community. Additionally, routines can be a key component of a brave and reflective classroom community. Setting aside 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning and/or end of class to welcome students to the learning space, gauge their emotional well-being, and nurture community can help students experience school as a crucial part of their day that is predictable, meaningful, and supportive. Check out all of these opening and closing routines provided as Pear Deck templates for you to easily drop into a lesson. Think Circa and Pear Deck have partnered to provide educators with Circa slides complete with Pear Deck interactive prompts designed to spark courageous thinking. Each themed collection includes readings and writing experiences at 10 levels for readers at all levels of readiness. Each deck has been curated by Think Circa's expert team and paired with proven instructional strategies to help your students navigate Think Circa lessons and prompt classroom conversations. To help educators support K-12 students in developing life skills, we've partnered with Everfi on a collection of free, real-world lessons powered by Pear Deck. The educational journey includes so much more than traditional academic subjects. When young people learn about real-world skills in school, they are equipped with the tools they need to help navigate life's daily challenges, such as financial literacy, health and wellness, social-emotional learning, STEM, and career readiness. Loved by teachers in classrooms around the world, Canva makes it easy to unleash your creativity and create lessons, learning materials, and activities in minutes. Canva for Education's template team has created a series of ready-to-use editable templates designed specifically with Pear Deck in mind. To use these slides, simply edit as desired in Canva, drop directly into Google Slides or PowerPoint Online, add Pear Deck interactive elements, and present. Or you can use these templates as in directly from our content orchard. We've partnered with News-O-Matic to help educators teach students 21st century skills like media literacy and global awareness through interactive news content. News-O-Matic is a digital learning platform that publishes original news content every day to engage K-8 students in literacy, social studies, science, and social-emotional learning. Users have access to 12,000 plus articles at multiple reading levels and in 5 languages. Ready to get started engaging students in current affairs and discussion? Find fresh decks every week in the Content Orchard. At this time, the decks in the Content Orchard will be exclusively Google Slides files. The Pear Deck team is currently working on a plan to make PowerPoint versions of Pear Deck lessons accessible within the Content Orchard. In the meantime, PowerPoint versions of most lessons are available at peardeck.com/orchard. I hope you enjoyed exploring all the content that can be found in our Content Orchard with me today. To stay up to date with our newest partnerships and Pear Deck templates, make sure you subscribe to the Pear Deck newsletter. Thank you and enjoy the rest of Pear Fair.
We love when passionate educators want to share the power of Pear Deck with others. That's why we created our Share the Pear program. Whenever you're doing a training on Pear Deck, no matter how big or small, make sure to let us know. Filling out our Share the Pear form will give you access to official training decks, Pear Deck premium trial codes, swag, and customizable invites to share with attendees of your trainings. Learn more by heading to www.peardeck.com/sharethepear and make sure you tweet us at Pear Deck with the hashtag #ShareThePear to let us know when you're teaching fellow educators about Pear Deck. If you were hosting a Pear Deck training today, what's one top tip you tell your audience? Share in the chat.
In this session, we're going to explore how to improve productivity, increase educator wellness, and self-care. For our objectives in this session, we're going to identify 6 different types of self-care. The main goal is for you to walk away with at least one thing that you can do within your scope to take care of yourself. Then we're going to talk about the causes, effects, and possible solutions to educator burnout. And last but not least, we're going to discuss practical, budget-friendly ideas for self-care for students and staff. This works in the classroom, at home, or wherever you are. So this is our agenda. I'm going to go into a brief introduction of who I am. Then we're going to talk about preventing burnout. Then we will transition into the different types of self-care. And then we're going to mix in some practical activities that you can do in the classroom to improve the overall wellness of your students and for yourself. Let me introduce myself. My name is John Burnett, and I am a middle school counselor living in Houston, Texas. This is my 12th year in education. I started off as a middle school Spanish teacher, and I've been an elementary and middle school counselor. I've also been an assistant principal, and I've worked in the mental health field as a family intervention specialist. I also share resources, videos, and tips for educators and school counselors on my Instagram and my YouTube under the same name, which is Counseling with Mr. B. Before we get started, I'd like to begin with a quote. An empty lantern provides no light. Self-care is the fuel that allows your light to shine brightly. This quote really resonated with me, and you're going to see why throughout this presentation. Hopefully, you'll feel the same way. Over the last couple of years, there's been some challenges and barriers that have drastically changed education for students, staff, and families. I like to call it the Zoom. And I'm not talking about the platform Zoom where you are able to webcam and teach. I mean that everything just felt like it was so fast and overwhelming. But there is hope, and we're going to talk about it in this presentation. I wholeheartedly believe in prevention, so now we're going to talk about the causes of burnout. So these are some of the causes of burnout. This is not an exhaustive list. If you've ever worked in a toxic work environment, that can drastically affect your mental and your physical health and cause you to be stressed and have anxious thoughts. Unclear expectations is another cause of burnout. If you've ever worked in a place where the mission, the vision, and the goals weren't clearly outlined, it can cause confusion and stress. And as we move into the next point, recognition is super important, especially over the things that have been happening over the last couple of years. There have been many educators who have gone above and beyond to meet the needs of their students and their staff and their communities. And if we're not being recognized for our efforts, even a simple thank you, that can cause burnout. Being micromanaged, a lack of trust from administration is definitely a cause of burnout. And then unmanageable work or caseloads. If you work in secondary schools or you're a school counselor, you might know something about unmanageable caseloads because we're responsible for multiple students. So what are the effects of burnout? So if we don't find ways to reduce burnout and take care of ourselves, it can affect our mental and our physical well-being. So let's talk about some of the effects. Burnout can cause you to fall behind on your work or miss deadlines. This is when you feel like the workload is constantly piling up and you're not able to keep up. And if people who do experience burnout actually keep up with their deadlines, at times they may deliver subpar work just simply to get it over with. Stress and burnout can cause you to damage personal relationships. If you give so much at work, at times if you go home, you're not able to give anything back to your family, your friends, or your pets. Burnout can also cause people to neglect their physical health because they don't have the energy to go home and cook a meal, so they'll stop at a fast food restaurant, which could become costly and affect finances. People who are stressed and experiencing burnout also neglect their physical health by not going to the gym regularly because they don't have the time and the energy to do so. So we've talked about the causes and effect of burnout. Let's talk about some solutions. Let's go on a positive note. Here are 5 ways that you can reduce burnout. I hope you have your pen and paper and get ready to take some notes. These are some tips that will help you reduce stress and anxiety so you can pour back into your cup and pour into others. Number 1, set boundaries. You have to be able to set professional boundaries for yourself in order to take care of yourself. So as far as email, I don't check email outside of work. There's a funny story and reason why I don't do this. My first year as a school counselor, I checked my email at 9 p.m. at night, and I had an email from an angry parent. It made me upset because I was not able to address the situation in the moment, and I was not able to fall asleep. So I make sure that I don't check email outside of work. That goes with phone calls too. Another way to establish boundaries is to limit your phone calls about work outside of work. And one of the most important things that you can do for yourself is take your PTO. I know it may seem frowned upon. As long as you don't take all the days all at once, it's important for you to take mental health days. And so I always start with this meme in the bottom right-hand corner. PTO stands for prepare the others because I won't be there. In all seriousness, you have to use your mental health days. If you know that you're not at your best, you're not going to be able to give your students your best. So take your PTO whenever you feel like you need to. Tip number 2, create a system of organization for yourself. That can reduce stress. As you can see in the picture, I use an arc planner that I purchased from Staples. there's a special hole punch where you can actually put inserts in it. So I put my planning documents inside of this and I'm able to change them out. I decorate it with stickers so it can be personal for me. I use this planner and I take it with me anytime I'm in a meeting. I take notes in it. Anytime a student comes to see me, it helps me to stay organized. I have hall duty, so I help our students transition, and I set alarms to make sure that I keep up with that time. And the last organization system that I utilize, I have a digital calendar. I color code all of my major meetings on Outlook so that it stands out and is visually appealing. You have to find an organization system that works for you. Tip number 3, prioritize tasks. Every morning I get to work about 15 minutes early and I sit down and I make a to-do list. When I'm making my to-do list, I write down the major things that I have to get done for that day. I also make note of the students that I need to check in for that day. Then I go back and I put like a star or a check on the major things that I really need to get done. And I prioritize my tasks. It brings you a sense of joy when I can check off something off my list. So that's why I love making to-do lists. Tip number 4, practice the KonMari method. Marie Kondo is an organization consultant that helps people organize their closets, their homes, and their workspace. I took some of the tips that she mentioned in her book and I applied it to the life of an educator. Organizing your workspace. Every evening before I leave work, I always make sure that my desk is cleaned off so that when I come back in the next morning, it's clean and organized. It brings me a sense of joy when I see my desk neatly organized the next day. Marie Kondo also encourages us to do what brings us joy. For me, I love doing bulletin boards and doing anything creative at my school. And so if I know I have a lot of things to do, sometimes I'll take a break and do something creative, like go make a bulletin board, and it brings me joy. Another thing that I do is I clean up my email list. I delete emails that I don't need anymore. I made folders in my Outlook and I drop important emails in there so I can easily access them later on. This is another way to organize my digital and my physical resources. So making sure that your workspace is clean, organized, and that you are efficient. That's another way to have self-care. And last but not least, practicing self-care. So we're going to talk about the 6 different types of self-care, and I'm going to give you some examples that you can walk away with. But before we do that, I would love to share this quote that I found from Michelle Obama. Whether an illness affects your heart, your leg, or your brain, it's still an illness and there should be no distinction. So what I take from that is that we have to make sure we take care of our mental and our physical well-being because either one of those can drastically affect our health. So here are 6 different types of self-care, and I'm going to give you some examples that you can use throughout your daily life. Most of these examples can be done between 5 and 10 minutes, and they're free, a lot of them. Number 1, emotional self-care. These are the activities that help you connect, process, and reflect on your emotions. These are the coping skills that I teach my students. These are coping skills like deep breathing, acts of gratitude, positive affirmation, journaling, doing something creative like art, music, drawing, or painting. And that also includes listening to your favorite podcast or playlist on your commute to and from work. There's this wonderful free tool that I would like to introduce you to. If you go to actionforhappiness.org, you can download a free calendar with different activities for every day of that month. For example, Self-Care September is right around the corner. And so every single day you can share these exercises with your students or you can do them personally, but you can just pick whatever day of the week it is and do the simple exercise or the simple activity that's listed. For example, if you look at Friday, September 2nd, it simply states, notice the things that you do well, however small. So again, that's focusing on those small wins. I love Saturday, September 3rd. Let go of self-criticism and speak kindly and positively to yourself. These small things have a huge impact on the way we treat ourselves, the way we see ourselves, and the way we treat other people too. So again, this is free. If you go to actionforhappiness.org, you can download your calendar every single month. You can share these activities with your students in your class, or you can do them at home with your family or even yourself. I would love to share some benefits of mindfulness and self-care because it has a lot of benefits that can benefit you in your daily life. Doing mindfulness and deep breathing exercises reduces stress and anxiety. This works in the school setting, at home. If you're ever stuck in traffic, you can use these exercises anywhere. These exercises also increase your feelings of being calm and relaxation. They reduce chronic pain. So if you ever have any areas in your body that are aching, mindfulness and relaxation helps relieve that. Mindfulness also improves your self-confidence and your self-esteem, because when you take care of yourself, you feel better about yourself. And then it increases your energy level. So if you're ever in the classroom and your students are starting to become antsy or drifting off during the lesson, do some deep breathing mindfulness exercises, because it gives your brain and your body a boost. Mindfulness also helps you to feel more compassion for other people and yourself, which means you'll be a better person in the community. If you're in an elementary or a middle school, you can go to YouTube and find some really great deep breathing exercises on MindYeti. The videos on MindYeti are for elementary and maybe middle school, but you can find some deep breathing exercise for high school students too. So this is an example that I pulled for an elementary school setting. It's a really simple deep breathing exercise. This video is about 2 minutes long. You can do this in the morning to set the tone for the day, or you can share these activities with students after lunch or recess to kind of reset their focus and get them back engaged and ready for learning. So one activity that you can do in the classroom with your students is you can create a stress-free playlist and share it with your students. I always send a Google form and allow my students to pick a song that brings them joy. And then I combine that list and make a huge playlist and share those songs with students during independent work time. And if they are comfortable with this, you can shout out the students who recommended the song that's playing at the time. This is a great way to build a sense of community. Positive affirmations are a simple yet powerful activity that you can share with your students in the classroom. You can go to any search engine, type in positive affirmation examples, make a list of them, and either share them in a presentation like you see here, or you can write them out on the board, or you can share them with your students. So these are just a couple that I picked. There was one website where it had over 100 positive affirmations, and these are just some that I chose to pick. Number 1, I can do great things. 2, I am in this world to make a difference. 3, I can find positives in any given situation. Number 4, I am growing my knowledge and learning. Imagine the impact if you share these simple positive affirmations with your students. It will increase their growth mindset, their sense of grit, and their resilience. And for you too. Also, it's important to know that making positive statements to yourself not only helps you to build confidence, helps you to care about other people too. Sharing positive affirmations also helps your performance at school, in sports, and clubs, because it helps you to feel better about yourself and helps you to rebound if you ever make a mistake. And the last thing it does is it improves your mental skills and sharpens your focus. So again, you can share these positive affirmations with your students very easily. It's a simple activity and it doesn't cost anything. Tip number 2, mental self-care. Activities that stimulate your mind and your intellect. This involves reading for pleasure, solving puzzles, playing games like chess, and going to museums. Houston has some amazing museums, and I love going and taking pictures and reading all of the information. Hobbies and do-it-yourself projects are really great for mental self-care. You can find out how to do just about anything by watching TikTok videos or YouTube and simply doing your own projects. This is an excellent form of self-care, and it leads into learning new skills. And if you ever need to take a break from social media, that's another form of mental self-care. Number 3, practical self-care. This is the one that I believe strongly applies to educators. This is when you complete tasks that establish order and eliminate future stress. Creating budgets. This is something you can do at home to help with your financial stress. I shared the importance of making to-do lists in an earlier tip. Another example is to take professional development classes outside of work-related. For example, there's this photography course that I signed up for, and I'm learning how to take better pictures. I love it because it doesn't have anything to do with school, and it's a way to bring me relief and joy. And then organizing your home, closet, and workspace. These are examples of practical self-care that establish order in your life. Self-care tip number 4, social self-care. These are the activities that you can do to nurture and deepen your connections and relationships with people around you. Some examples of social self-care is going to brunch with your friends, going on dates, calling family regularly. For me, my family lives in Memphis, but we have a group chat where we'll send each other encouraging messages, funny TikToks and jokes and things like that. It's a great way to stay connected. Another form of social self-care for introverts is going on dates with yourself, like going to a coffee shop, going to the movies, or going out to eat on your own. You don't have to do these with people. It's still a form of self-care. And number 5, physical self-care. These are activities that improve your health and well-being. For example, going to the gym, exercising, taking a walk, biking, hiking, making sure that you get enough sleep every night, drinking water and staying hydrated, meal prepping. Taking your lunch and meal prepping every week is a way to lower costs. Getting a manicure, a pedicure, or even a massage. These are things that you can do to take care of your physical well-being. And for physical activities that you can do in the classroom, check out GoNoodle.com. They've got some elementary and middle school activities that you can do for movement. They've got some activities that you can do with your students, like dancing and movement and brain breaks. You can probably still do this with high school too. They're big kids. Another thing you can do is search on YouTube. There's a game called Would You Rather. It offers students 2 choices. You can either choose Spider-Man or Iron Man, and each choice is associated with a different type of movement. Like, for example, if I chose Spider-Man, then I can get up and do some jumping jacks, or if I chose Iron Man, then you do planks. It's a great way to make sure that your students have fun, they're engaged, and it takes their mind off of the academics for just a few minutes. And last but not least is spiritual self-care. These are activities that nurture your spirit and allow you to connect, and they don't necessarily have to be related to religion. For example, mindfulness meditation, deep breathing exercises, praying, going to places of worship, being in nature, so going out for a walk, going for a hike, going to the beach. And my personal favorite is self-reflection. And at the end of every day, I try to focus on a small win, something that went well for that day. You have to give yourself grace and be able to focus on the positive, even if it's a small thing. So there's a mindfulness exercise that I would love to share with you. It's one of my favorites. It's called Alien Mindful Eating. So what you do, you get a small piece of candy or gum or mints or chocolate, and you pretend like you're an alien and you've never seen that candy before. So you use your 5 senses to navigate this exercise. And again, this is something you could easily share with your class. So you have them pick up the piece of candy and look at it, have them observe it and call out what they see. For example, if it's chocolate, have them describe it. Describe the color, describe the texture, what it looks like. Is it bumpy? Does it have ridges? That sort of thing. Then you have your students put it up to their ear and pretend like they can hear it. Have them smell it and see what it smells like and see if it reminds them of anything. Our sense of smell is very powerful and it can bring back memories. For example, if I'm smelling turkey, it reminds me of Thanksgiving, it reminds me of family gatherings and fun. So sometimes those memories can be triggered by our sense of smell. Then last but not least, you have these students put that chocolate or that candy on their tongue, but encourage them not to chew it right away. If it's something that can dissolve, like a mint, have them describe what that feeling is like when it's on their tongue, and then they can bite it. This is a really good activity that you can use for test anxiety, and it really makes our students take the time to focus on something more positive as opposed to the negative things that are going on or those feelings that they're experiencing. I really love this activity. Here's a life wheel activity. This is a very simple assessment that you can do to show where your priorities are. It's a survey that helps you identify what areas of your life that you're placing the most focus on. So for example, if you look at this wheel right here, it gives you a number, and then you can see, well, maybe I need to put a little bit more focus on one area and take a little bit away from another area. It's really simple. And if you would like to complete it, it only takes a couple minutes. And here's the QR code. You just simply scan it and take it. I think it literally takes about 5 minutes to take this assessment. It helps you determine what areas are the most important to you and where you can shift your focus. In this session, we talked about the causes and effects of burnout, but we talked about the solutions too. There are simple things that you can do that are low cost and low time consuming that you can do to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and activities that you can easily share with your students in the classroom. If you would like to stay connected, I have a Facebook group where I share resources. It's called the Learning Lab. You can search it on Facebook. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at Counseling with Mr. B or on my YouTube channel at Counseling with Mr. B. On my Instagram and YouTube, I share resources and videos to help educators make their life easier, and I talk about mental health tips. So if you liked any of the information that you heard in this presentation, be sure to stay connected. Have a great rest of your day.
Here at Pear Deck, we love celebrating educators and all the amazing work that you do. That's why we want to make sure you know about our Perry Good Works program. We know that many of you pull money from your own pockets for school supplies and more to meet students' needs. Perry Good Works is a program designed to show our support for the extra good work that you're constantly doing. Each month, we award $1,000 to educator-led initiatives through Donors Choose. Our hope is that this giving program will raise awareness around the gaps in school funding while directly helping teachers and students. Submit your Donors Choose project to Perry Good Works today. Head to peardeck.com, Perry Good Works to get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining today for Lessons in Driving Equitable Engagement. My name is Ryan Heschler. I work in curriculum and instruction here at GoGuardian, and I'm a former teacher, a school leader, and district leader. I was a chief academic officer here in Wisconsin, where I'm from. And I'm excited to talk to you today about engagement, which is a topic that I think is so crucial to student learning and student outcomes, but can be really hard to pin down. And over the course of my career, my understanding of what was truly engagement evolved. And I'm going to start today by talking about a couple of phrases that I heard a lot over the last few years. The first of which was this idea of a new normal. And when the challenges emerged from school closures and shutdowns and early on in the pandemic, I heard this phrase a lot, this idea that we needed to establish a new normal. And what I took that to mean is that we needed to take things from this experience that we could bring back with us as we established a new sense of normalcy in education and ultimately serve students better. And I think as the pandemic dragged on and challenges became more complex, we went into school closures and then virtual learning, hybrid learning, and some sort of back and forth, school shutdowns. It became the narrative switched a little bit from let's find our new normal to we need to go back to basics. And for sure, we have seen that for most students, being in a classroom with their teacher, sort of a traditional schooling format, is what's best for student achievement. And there were areas where it wasn't possible for us as educators to reach students in the same way. But I also think that there were some unique things that emerged from this experience of teaching virtually. And as we've come back to school, and I've heard this phrase more and more, this idea of back to basics, I worry that we're doing something else. And there's a phrase that pops into my head. I'm a new dad, and I always thought this phrase was weird, but especially as a dad, I think it's weird. And it's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I don't know why anyone would ever do that, but what I take that to mean is that as we move on to something new, we don't want to totally get rid of everything that was with us before. And in the same way that we didn't get rid of everything from traditional schooling when we moved to virtual and hybrid schooling, there are some things that we learned over the past couple of years that we shouldn't be so quick to get rid of and to bring with us. And that's what I want to explore today, specifically through the topic of engagement. And it's a tricky one to nail down. How do we define student engagement? If you Google how to increase student engagement in your classroom, you'll find 25 ways to increase engagement or ways to interest your students in your lessons or things like that. So is engagement interest? Is it participation? Is it on task? What does it mean for a student to truly be engaged with what they're doing? And it can be overly simplistic. Just because students look like they're doing something doesn't mean that they're actually learning. It can also be overly complicated, or I shouldn't say overly complicated, but it can be fairly complex. We've got lots of research that's been done into how we define student engagement and the proper ways that engagement can manifest itself in the classroom. There's frameworks and protocols for increasing engagement. And these are for sure valuable as we develop as educators and as a school system to better serve students. But I think what I found is that I needed a more concrete way to look at engagement on a day-to-day level. And what was really helpful for me over the course of my career was when I stumbled upon the idea of ratio. And to this, I owe credit to Doug Lamov and his team. Teach Like a Champion is where ratio first emerged. And really simply, ratio is just what is the proportion of the cognitive work that students are doing in the classroom. And this is framed by two questions, and I love these two questions. So the first, the participation ratio, is how many students are answering the questions, how much of the time. And the second is the thinking ratio, how hard are students thinking about the task. And in order to have a high ratio of engagement in your class, you need to have both of those. So if I ask a question like, what's your favorite color, to students, I'm probably going to have high participation ratio. Almost any student of any age could answer that question. But do they have to think very hard about it? Probably not. Most students would know their favorite color, and it's an opinion. They wouldn't have to back it up with any sort of work or evidence. So I would have really high participation ratio, but pretty low thinking ratio. On the flip side, if I ask a really complex, higher order thinking question, and maybe I hear from 1 or 2 students who are sharing with raised hands, I have high thinking ratio, but I don't have very high participation ratio. And in order to have successful engagement in classrooms, you need both. And so I want to talk about how we reframe engagement through the concept of ratio. And I love this visual. It puts the 2 questions that we just discussed on an axis. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, for any given task, what is the level of thinking ratio and participation ratio for students? So in a typical scenario, we already talked about this. I ask a question. I'm a teacher at the front of the room. I maybe give my students a few minutes to think, and then I'm calling on raised hands in the classroom. And at best, maybe I get to 2 or 3 or even 4 students. But that means that I have a blind spot into the thinking of almost the entire rest of my class. So my ratio here is low. I don't have insight into how hard my students are thinking, and I really don't know how many of them have engaged with the topic. So ideally, I want to get to a spot where all my students are answering every question and they're thinking deeply about it. And this is a really challenging thing to gain insight to. And one of the ways that we can gain insight into it is by seeing what students are thinking. And often we see that through writing. This is the Pear Deck teacher dashboard, which I show as an example of a way to gain really quality insight into student thinking without having to necessarily call on raised hands. And we're going to revisit this a little bit more throughout this session. But going back to the concept of ratio, how do you drive that in classrooms? How do you increase the ratio, and what strategies work? Well, there's lots of strategies that we use as educators to gain insight into what students are doing and to shift more of the cognitive load to them. We can put in protocols like stop and jot, read, write, think, everybody writes, and this allows students to show their learning through writing. We can also do protocols like cold calling or think, pair, share, where a student is on the hook for an answer, or they share with their partner. And all can be key strategies to increase student ratio. But the problem is there are certain limits in traditional classrooms for the teacher to gain that insight and for us to really know what level of thinking is going on with students. And so some of those challenges are things like circulation, moving around the classroom and getting to all students over the course of a lesson. If you're collecting student work, I remember as a teacher having piles of paper sit on my desk that unfortunately I didn't get to that day or the next day or the next week even. And by the time I did, we were so far past the lesson that the insight that I was gaining was already lost. And I couldn't reinforce learning with my students. And there are definitely ways to increase ratio in a classroom without technology. But one of the things that I think was really interesting to emerge from this pivot that we had to make in education over the last few years was we saw every student suddenly with a device. And teachers employed really interesting tactics in order to elicit feedback from their students and to learn what their students were learning. And, you know, we saw things like chat emerge from Zoom and Google Meet. We saw polls. I saw an increase in use of Google Docs and Google Classroom, and teachers giving each other, or teachers giving students feedback and students giving feedback to one another. And I remember visiting some of these virtual classrooms and saying, man, I can't wait to get my students back in the class, but I really love how insightful these views are into student thinking. And I hope that we don't get rid of that as we return to school. And one of the ways that we gained that insight was through engagement tools that exploded in popularity over the last couple of years, Pear Deck being one of them. And Pear Deck really gave teachers this unique tool where they could reach all students. They could gain insight into student thinking, and they could deliver precise feedback to students, whether it was one-on-one or a whole group. And the thing about a tool like Pear Deck is that it allows teachers and students to interact in a way that is lower stakes. Students don't need to be put on the spot. They don't need to be worried about not having the right answer if that's not their learning style. Teachers can see their thinking in real time, and they can engage with them and prompt them with questions. And I think the value of something like Pear Deck, when you're looking at the concept of ratio, is that it provides an opportunity for all students to engage with all content all the time in a way that teachers can gain valuable insight to, and it can inform their instruction. And I wanted to take a second to sit down with a teacher who I saw this used in his classroom, and it made such a dramatic impact on the culture of his classroom and the culture of student learning. And so I want to share with you a conversation I had with one of my old friends, Mark Nabok. Hey, Mark, good to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us today. Could you just introduce yourself?
My name is Mark Nabok. I am a teacher in Milwaukee. I teach 5th grade at the moment, and I've been teaching for 14 years.
Awesome. And I was lucky enough to see you teach in some of those years, and I just loved being in your classroom. And, today we're talking about the idea of engagement and what that means when students are deeply engaged. We're trying to increase the ratio of participation. Who is engaged, and how do we know that? And I think I want to start just with, we all as educators want students to be engaged. And I'm going to put that in quotes, but like that means many different things, I think, to many different people. And what does it mean to you? Like, what are you looking for when you check engagement? When you say students in my class are engaged?
I'm looking for not just being on task with their bodies, their eyes. I need to know what they're thinking. And so engagement to me is not superficial, and engagement to me is deeper. Engagement is being able to grapple with the subject in a very deep level.
We're talking about ratio today, and like the percentage of students who might be involved in a task. And in a traditional classroom where the teacher's up front and asks a question and maybe students raise their hand, like you might not have that ability to have insight. And one of the things that I found fascinating out of the adaptations we had to make during the last couple of years was we discovered all of these ways to find out what students were thinking all at the same time, whether that was chatting in Zoom or something like Pear Deck or even a Google Doc where students were working together. We found that technology could help with that. And I'm curious, like, how do you use technology in your classroom to help drive that engagement from students?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it helps for me to think about it, how I would do it without the technology. And typically what I would do is I would ask a question and I would get a response from one student, and I'd be able to understand what their thinking was and where their breakdown of understanding was. But that takes a lot of time. Like if I went through everybody, think about how long it takes to get to, I have 26 students, to get to 26 students and check for one question. You're using a significant amount of time in the classroom. Technology, when I implement technology, what that allows me to do is to increase my efficiency of checking for understanding, to see where those breakdowns occur, and then to address those breakdowns in a very targeted, laser precise fashion.
I'm smiling because it's making me think of a time where I walked into your classroom and I saw you with that laser-like precision, and I just didn't know what was going on. I remember walking in, and I think we were part of a larger tour, and seeing kids just like so focused on what they were doing. And there were books and computers, and you were sitting in the middle of the room, and it was quiet for a long time. And we were looking around like, what is going on? And then suddenly there was this very targeted, precise feedback that I heard you deliver to one student, and then to another student, and then to another student. And I realized you were watching all their answers in real time. Can you talk to me about how you give that precise feedback when you have students responding to a question or working with a prompt?
It starts with being thoughtful with the question. The question's hugely important, and that question has to come from a deep understanding. I'm a reading teacher, so it has to come from the deep understanding of the text. When I put that question, in Pear Deck, that question's important. I put that there because it's important. And I think what that does is it allows me to communicate with the students that every question that I ask is important, because they're able to respond, and I can immediately address that response. And in the student's mind, at just a basic level, they understand that what I'm asking is important because they hear me responding to them. So just on a basic level, their response matters because I've addressed it in a fraction of the time that it would take me to address it if it was just written on paper or if I asked it orally. It also creates a culture of mistakes, that mistakes are not just okay, they're actually vital. And I can absolutely, with laser precision, address every single student's unique breakdown of understanding, because everyone's is a little bit different. Every student's understanding is a little bit different. Or I can maybe look at the group as a whole and just say, in general, where is our class breaking down here? Where is their understanding breaking down, and address the whole group that way. But it allows me to create a culture of this question's important and my response is important. And so students right away, you see the engagement go up just on a on-task level. But also because of the culture of mistakes, you see that my mistake, my answer is important. My breakdown of understanding is important. It's vital to get me to where I want to go.
Yeah. Mark, I love that. I love the talk about like the culture that it creates, not just in the immediate sense of like this question, but over time, all questions, and then not even the question, my thought as a student, like, what am I thinking about? And I thought that was really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your time. I know it's the beginning of the school year. Things are crazy. I love your room setup, by the way. Love all the college flags. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, Mark, take care.
You too.
Welcome back. And I love hearing from Mark and hearing how he thinks about engagement and thinks about the culture of learning in his classroom. And it's just so inspirational to me to talk to a teacher who really cares about the culture of individual student thinking that Mark has been able to create in his classroom. So Mark, I appreciate it once again. And as we get close to the end here, I just wanted to wrap up what we've talked about. So we've started by reframing engagement by thinking about ratio. How do we focus on deep thinking and participation? You can't have key student engagement without both of those pieces. And as we saw, virtual learning created an opportunity for us to drive ratio using technology in classrooms. Pear Deck being one of those tools that allowed teachers to reach all students, to gain insight, to deliver precise feedback. And as we have returned to classrooms and we now have all of this technology at our fingertips, as we establish whatever the new normal is, it's important that even if we're going back to basics, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Let's bring the tools that have been successful in increasing student engagement with us into the physical classrooms, just like we use them in a virtual space. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay connected. Tell me how you're driving engagement in your classrooms and what you think about the idea of reframing engagement through a ratio lens. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your school year.
Immersive Reader, a service developed by Microsoft, uses proven techniques to help people of all ages and abilities improve comprehension and build confidence in their reading skills. Pear Deck's integration with Immersive Reader is available for Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint's online users, and has a wide range of benefits, including increasing fluency for English language learners or readers of other languages, helping to build confidence for emerging readers learning to read at higher levels, offering text decoding solutions for students with learning differences such as dyslexia or visual impairments, and providing translations of words or entire text. As a former educator, I found my students benefited greatly from using Immersive Reader to continue learning at home. When our live lessons from class turned to student pace mode for them to finish later, students, along with their families, used Immersive Reader to visualize the content with the picture dictionary and translate it into over 60 languages. How it works is simple. First, in your Pear Deck settings, you'll want to enable Immersive Reader. This setting applies to all feature sessions until you turn it off. That's it, teachers. Immersive Reader is ready to go and will be visible for your students when participating in a Pear Deck session. Students can activate Immersive Reader by clicking the icon in their student view. Doing so allows them to view text from the Pear Deck slide in a format that helps them follow along as it reads the text aloud, word by word. Students can also adjust settings such as the pace of dictation, text size, and spacing between words. They can change the reading voice and the background color too, which helps give students a sense of ownership of their learning. Immersive Reader has a grammar component as well that highlights nouns, verbs, and adjectives, and breaks down words by syllables. Immersive Reader can also translate words or entire text into over 60 languages and includes a picture dictionary. Teacher tip, be sure to model how to access and use Immersive Reader with your students by opening Student View on your projector screen and walking students through the tool. Now, back to Pear Fair.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building Authentic Collaboration from the Start. I am Stephanie Rothstein, and I am so excited to be here at Pear Fair. If you need it, there is a bit.ly for this presentation, and it's right at the top of the screen. So it is bit.ly/PearSteph, all lowercase. So again, I am Stephanie Rothstein. So happy to be a part of this, and thank you so much for joining this presentation. I'm an education innovation leader at Santa Clara Unified School District in Northern California, and I serve all 30 schools in the school district with students K through 12, and we have about 15,000 students in the school district. I am a writer, a speaker, a consultant. I'm a Pear Deck coach. Woohoo! Go Pear Deck coaches. I'm a Google Innovator trainer and coach and an Adobe Creative Educator. And again, I could not be more excited to be a part of this at the start of the school year. There is so much that takes place at the start of a school year, as you know. I am 20 years into education, and every school year looks a little bit different and feels a little bit different. But I always know that I would have new students in my classroom, and that really what I needed to do in order to be the best teacher that I could be in that space is provide an opportunity to connect with my students and help them learn how to connect and collaborate with one another. So I want to show you what I did as an educator and what has helped me, and that I hope will help you too. So one of the things that I did was I created canwetalkedu.com, and I'll take you through it in just a minute. But I was that teacher where I was always giving personality assessments, things that would help me get to know my students a little bit better at the very start of a school year. But what I wanted was a way that once I had that information, what do I do with it? What do I have students do with it? And how do I use it in a way that feels authentic and has other people understand themselves better, has students understand the people that they're working with better, and really has us return to using it throughout the entire school year so that it doesn't just feel like a one and done. So as you can see here, there are 4 different colors that are listed here or that are shown here on this slide. And I'm going to explain to you what those 4 colors are in just a second. When you're on the Can We Talk EDU website, so there's a website that has a ton of material about what I'm going to go over. And I'm just going to give you a little snippet of it just to help us understand a bit of background for the presentation. So this website has a whole presentation on it that reviews the colors that I'm about to explain. And it also then shows you where you can go to take the personality survey. So if you're familiar with the True Colors survey, it's a Ketterman survey from 1972. It is rooted in research and it is tried and true. And I have tried them all out there. And I love this one for students because I think that it is simple enough that no matter the age of the student, it really is accessible, but it also can be utilized by adults. So I appreciate that. So you can take the digital version of the survey here. There's an adult version and a version if you have elementary or younger students that might need a shorter amount of questions. And then there's things that we can do with it. So again, as I mentioned, there are 4 colors for this survey, and then we're going to use those colors to do a ton of activities. So I'm going to take you back here. So for the 4 colors, we have gold, green, blue, and orange. And after you or your students take the survey, they're emailed their results of the survey. And so it'll show them what are their overall points for in each of the categories. And so they likely will have one category that kind of rises to the top for them. So if they are a gold, our golds tend to be our rule followers. They really feel good with having a structure. I tend to call those my bumper bowling lane students, that they really feel solid and secure by knowing what are the parameters of a situation. They like to know deadlines, and they often are our students that are asking, is this right to a teacher? Our greens are our big thinker, big picture, visionary students that often are asking really deep questions. And so really for a green, the biggest question is why. And they want to make sure that anytime they are venturing on doing anything, that they understand the true reason behind it. And so that is going to be really important for a green. Our blues are our feelers. So they often are ones that they are thinking first with their heart, and they want to know that they are connected to the people around them and that the people around them are also safe and seen and heard. And then our oranges are often our people who maybe are less fearful of getting up right away in front of a class or presenting. They seem to most of the time be driven by competition, or they really like when there's action in a space, and they like to move quickly from topic to topic. So with all of this, what do we do with this information? The reason I wanted to go over this with you is because I use it for every single thing in my classroom, and it has helped me so much over the years, and I have presented it to lots of teachers who have really enjoyed using it in their rooms, and so I hope that you will as well. So back on the Can We Talk EDU site, all of the resources that I'm reviewing with you are here, and I've also linked them in the presentation. But you can find this and so much more under resources. If you just click right here, there's a whole set of resources that explains how you can do this and a whole lot more. And I've just picked out kind of my top ones. If you had to focus on just a few ways to use Can We Talk, these were my top ones. So the first is, as a teacher, oh gosh, I often am putting my students into groups. And so one of the things that I think about is, how do I put students into groups? Now that they've all taken their survey, I usually look at who my students are in terms of these personality colors. And then I use those colors to help me make their groups a more balanced group. And we talk about it as a team. If you're in a classroom where maybe you let your students pick groups, I often will say to my students when I was working with them, I would say, just make sure that you at least have one or two other colors represented in your group. And so then they'd have to look around. I would also have students, there is a different resource that's in there. I'd have students write their name on the particular color, and I'd take their picture and I'd put it up in my classroom. And so students have all presented on their colors. We're going to talk about different ways to connect, but that's how they know the colors of the other students in the class, and then they can often talk to them about it. And so you could have students go to 4 corners in the room, and then they have to make sure that they have people from each color. Whatever way you want to build your groups, I think it's important that you really think about how you're doing it. So if you use Jamboard, for instance, you can start to keep track of who you've had in a group. So you might have your students that are here. And the beauty of using Jamboard is, if we have this group option A, then if I want to, after this one, I can go right up here and duplicate this. And now I know what groups they were in for that first group. And now for this next group, I could then organize it and go, okay, I don't want those same students together. And so I could move this one and maybe trade it with a different student who's a green, so we remain having a balanced class or balanced groups. Now, often you're not going to get where it's perfection in terms of numbers. I often find that there are a lot of oranges depending on the grade level that you teach. And so it just depends, but it really is about trying to make them as even as possible so that students can learn from one another and that their best skills can be showcased in a team. And then once you have your groups together, some of the things that are really wonderful to do after we have our groups together is to dive just a little bit deeper. And so the way that I do that is that one of my very favorite activities that I do at the start of the year that I'm going to show you are our Can We Talk slides. And so I'm actually going to take you to this one right now. And this Can We Talk slides, I know that I'm not in the present mode. I'm doing that on purpose, and I'm going to show you why. So these Can We Talk slides are there, and you are more than welcome to, when you're on here, you are more than welcome to make a copy of these. And these are going to be used to help you and your students get to know one another. So these, what I ask of students is that they can decorate either a water bottle, a phone case, a notebook of the particular color that is their prominent color. And then they can create a slide that's all about them. In addition, I have students make a flip grid about themselves, introducing their slide. So I'm going to take you through that right now. There are a variety of topics that are here to help them to know some of the things that they could put on the slide and what they could talk about. And then here you'll see, here's my example slide. And in a little bit, you'll get to hear my own flip grid that I recorded about myself. But you'll see I have pictures of my family and my 3 kids and my husband's here. And then I decorated my green phone case. So hello, I'm a green, with things that are important to me. And so what I've given you here is a template for these. So if you come down to slide 5, there's a template, and I want to show you this really cool trick. I use this all the time. So if you are not familiar with the gray space, I call it the play space. So I'm going to go to View, Zoom, 50%. And this area that is all around the slide is the gray space, otherwise known as the play space for me. So when I work with students, this gray space is so wonderful. It really is an area where I can put so many things like little stickers that then could be dragged in. So certainly students can find their own stickers that they want to use, but this just makes it so much easier. It saves everybody some time. They can physically drag this into their slide. And so if you are on other slides later, these are here on their own slide and they can be duplicated. All of these slides, if you need any more, you can add more to it. And all of the stickers that we've put in are around the edge, and you could certainly add more. So add all the ones that you'd want and then keep duplicating the slides. You could add logos or things from your own school or your district, whatever you would want that would be great for you and your students is wonderful. So the way that you could do this, you could delete what's here on this part of the slide. And then let's say you are a green like me, you could drag in something that's green like the phone case, and you could make it bigger. And then you could start to decorate it with whatever stickers you want. You could add pictures of your family on the side. So if there were other things that you would want, let's say, oh yeah, I did drama in high school, so maybe I would add that, and I need to arrange the order to bring it to the front if a student asks. And then you can always make this smaller or bigger depending on what it is that you need. If you need to find other stickers that aren't here, another tip is to use the Explore button at the bottom here. And we could be searching, let's say maybe their favorite character is a duck, like maybe they want a duck logo or a duck PNG, something, an image that is a duck. And so here we go. Now we could put in a duck image onto our slide. Sometimes I even write the word transparent to just ensure that the image that I'm getting, maybe hopefully we will find out if it is actually transparent. I had a student that was obsessed with rubber duckies, so that made me think about this one and putting that in. So here we are, and you can also have, oh, it looks like this one might be white. Let's double check. Oh, no, it's not. Yay. Okay. And you can always leave this information is basically the copyright information. Sometimes for something like this, it might be easier to remove it so that they can continue to play. But it's great to know that when you're using that Explore button, that as an English teacher, oh gosh, I love that, knowing where you searched for stuff and where it was from. So they can add any of those stickers either from the gray space, the play space, or the Explore button. Those are the 2 areas I have my students use. And then they go ahead and make their slide just like I made mine here. And then they can add whatever it is that they want. When you want to view it back at full screen, we can go back to fitting the screen. And then here we are. So then the next part is that I actually have them record a flip grid of themselves introducing themselves and their slide. And so I'm going to show you how we can then use that in the classroom. So I have every student record their flip grid. And then what we end up doing is this becomes a class set of slides. So I'm just wanting you to follow the order here. We have this set of slides. I give all of my students edit access to the slides. And just a note, I remind them that I, as the teacher, since I'm the owner of this slide deck, I can see who's done what on the slides. So that helps reduce any issues. And then I also can look in, if you ever have any issue, you can also go right under here under file and version history, and you can see who's done what when. So once I tell that to students, I rarely have had any issues. If anything, it was by accident that someone did something. And so version history lets you recover things, but people are really more worried about making their own slide than touching others. But just in case, I want you to know that that's an option. So I purposefully have this in one slide deck altogether. You certainly could have students do individual decks and then bring it together on your own, but I like it all together because it saves me a step. That's just me. But do whatever works best for you. And so then the next step is that after every student has made their slide and then they're in their groups, the key is before they actually start to work with that group, I ask every student to watch the Flipgrids of their fellow group members. And then they watch them, and then I have them in a Pear Deck. So I've made a Pear Deck of the slide deck that has all the students in the class. So essentially what I end up doing is I take this deck and then I go to my add-ons and I go into open the Pear Deck add-on and I insert another slide after each of the students' slides. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here. And so I end up inserting, so I have my slide and then the students it has their Flipgrid on it. And then in addition to that, then after that, it has a slide that has people be able to say something or write something about what they learned about the people in their group. So it gives the slide deck that we just made a different way that we can then learn about the people in our class. And I often am thinking about how do we introduce ourselves in a way that everybody gets to really be heard. And this allows every person to share what they want to share and every person to be heard and then to know that they're heard. And then we even have some good question starters or connections that students have been able to take the time to think about. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in the student deck right now. Okay. So this is if you click on this part, it's what I just showed you. This is the student Pear Deck. So I'm going to log in like I'm a student right now here. And we're going to go through like I'm watching my own Pear Deck so that you could see what it would look like from a student perspective. So this is just the first slide that says, check out the slides from your classmates. Please find the slides for the students in your upcoming group and add comments and questions. And so here we go. We're going to listen to my little introduction here. Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about me and my slide and my personality color. My name is Mrs. Rothstein. My students often call me Mrs. R. But if you're watching this not as a student, my name is Steph or Stephanie Rothstein. And you'll see that I have pictures of my family on this slide. We love to go to Disneyland. We're a very big Disney family. We even went to Disney World last summer. And so you'll see that on my green phone case. Speaking of that, I am a green, so I very much am into big picture and questioning very deeply about why something is important. Some other things that you'll notice on my phone case, there's a shirt that's there. My middle daughter actually designed a shirt that was all about things that she cared about, so I put that on there. I went to UC Berkeley. What else can I tell you about me? I'm a Google innovator and a trainer and a coach. I love to play games. I like to listen to music and sing. I like to eat lots of yummy hummus and other food. And one of my favorite shows that I watch with my husband is Alone, even though I would never survive in the wilderness. That is enough about me for today, and I cannot wait to get to know each and every one of you. Bye, everyone. Okay, so what you can see that I did there was I took each of their Flipgrids that they've turned in, and then I would add it as a URL, as a www, as that option within Flipgrid. I would put that on with their slide. So then as students were going through, they could watch everyone's Flipgrid. And then the next piece is they get to add other pieces here. So let's do it. Okay, so if I'm giving, we're going to pretend like I'm giving some feedback here. So let me just make this a little bit smaller. I wanted to use the type tool. Here we go. So I'm going to say that my name is Steph, and then this is the person that I watched, we're going to just say was Mrs. R. You're going to go with me here. Okay. Okay. And then 3 fun facts about Mrs. R that we learned from this was she loves Disney. She has 3 children. And what else would I say about Mrs. R? Oh, she likes the show Alone. Is her favorite show. Okay, so maybe I would need to add some numbers here. Let's go back up here. There we go. And then that way it can all be separated. Okay, and then for our next one over here, 2 questions and or connections. So what I would do for this one is going to be anybody, they could draw things, but we could certainly write it. So maybe it might be, I might ask a question like, where else would you love to travel if you could go anywhere else? Maybe another thing I could write would be, oh my goodness, my family loves Disney too. I would love to talk to you all about our favorite rides. Okay, so this would be the amazing Pear Deck. And then what I usually do with this then, what I love about this is then I can show it to the person, and it also gives the students a chance to really think about how they want to connect with the people in their group and team. I often find that students need they need some process time to know how to build that connection. So that is one of my favorite ways to do that. And then I want to show you one other fun one. Okay, this is something fun that just is another way to really build some authentic connection and honor students for the great work that they're doing in your room. I love sending something like this home, both to a student and to their family. And so I just want to show you how I make it. So you are more than welcome to try this as I'm doing it. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to pick a background. If you like the background that I have here on this slide, you're more than welcome to use it. I got it on Canva. I made it. It was like a birthday invitation or some other celebration invitation, and I used it as the background on my slide. And then, but you can go anywhere to make a background. And then I put that on the slide, and then I added a GIF. And I have to tell you, the GIF is the student's favorite part. You can use this GIF generator for anything. I used it for vocabulary, but it is one of my favorite pro tips, and I give it at the end of almost every presentation because it's a game changer. So all you need to do is go to andthenIwaslike.co. You click this button, and then make sure that you've allowed your camera, and then you're going to record yourself. So you can make a little GIF. So here we go. I'm going to record it in 3, 2, 1. And there's my GIF. There we are. I've now made that GIF. And so you can save it. You can start over. If you like your GIF, then you can physically drag it to your desktop. That I find is probably the easiest way. There's lots of other buttons. You can also right click and save it as, but I find the physical drag is very helpful for me. And then you go ahead and you can add it to your slide. So if we go back to my slide, I usually write something. If I'm on, let me find this slide so you can really see it as a slide. So I just put this GIF in right here. I could put in a different GIF now that I've just made this one. Now we have this one. But I often write something about why I'm so glad that this person is my student. And I put in some specifics about them. And then I really make sure that I talk about them. And I do this for at least 3 students. I try to do at the start of the year a couple students each day, and I send those home until I can get through that class. And gosh, does it make a huge difference. It really, really does. As the school year goes on, I try to do a few things each week, but I have to tell you, it is one of my absolute favorite things to do. And then we use these kinds of gifts for everything in the classroom. I use it, as I mentioned, for student vocabulary. I use it as a check-in sometimes to ask how students are feeling. But I hope that that helps to provide you with a variety of ideas of ways to help build connection and true authentic collaboration between students and between you and your students and each other. You could have them send them to each other. Gosh, that would be such a fun idea, right? They could make something about how they appreciate the people in their own group and why. But it really is about giving people a chance to understand one another, to learn, to really listen, and then to make sure that they're grouped in a way that can help support them in learning even more. So I hope that my presentation helped you. You are more than welcome to stay connected with me. I'm on Twitter at StephRothEDU, and I'll just end here with a little bit about me and back to building authentic collaboration from the start. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Pear Fair, and it has been my pleasure to be a part of it. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Our most anticipated and requested feature of all time is without a doubt the Shared Teacher Dashboard. This feature enables teachers to share session controls and valuable student insight with other designated educators, including student teachers, education specialists, co-teachers, or even substitutes. Let me show you how it works. Start a new session or open a previous one from your sessions menu. Open the Teacher Dashboard. Get the co-teacher invitation link. You can find it in one of 2 ways. Select the class roster button or go to the navigation bar and select the 3 dots button. Then select Invite Co-Teacher. The invitation window opens and you see the shared dashboard link. Select Copy. The link is copied to your clipboard and you can paste and send it to the colleagues that you want to join your session. When another teacher joins your session, you see their account avatar in the top right corner of the dashboard. You're ready to go.
Hello and welcome into my Pear Fair 2022 session, Become a Pear Deck Expert. My name is Jake Miller. I like cheesy dad jokes like the phrase expert instead of expert because I'm a dad and I've got to make jokes with puns like putting the word pear into expert because it's a Pear Deck session and that's the kind of things us dads do, right? I'm not only a dad though, I'm a big fan of Pear Deck and a lot of other educational technology tools, but Pear Deck is one of my favorites out there, so I'm really excited to share with you some kind of ninja skills with Pear Deck today. So as you can see at the bottom there, you can access these slides at jakemiller.net/expert, spelled expert with an A in there to make it a dad joke. As I mentioned, my name is Jake. I am from Ohio here in the United States of America. I've worked in education for 19 years. This right now is my 20th year, and I'm working as a personalized learning specialist. But on the side, I am an ed tech aficionado. And as you can see there, eduducttape.com is one of the sites I have listed. That is the site for my podcast, Educational Duct Tape, and my book, Educational Duct Tape. And I'm also the host of a newer show called the EdTech News Brief. At the top of these slides here, you see a link to this session, jakemiller.net/expert. At that link, not only can you get to these slides to reference them later if you want to, but more importantly, you can get to a giveaway that I do in every live session that I ever put on. So 2 different people will win prizes from this session, so make sure you fill out the form to win those prizes. The second prize I'll give away is a free sticker. Now, I generally give away free educational duct tape stickers to anybody who wants them, but this is a special free sticker because if you win, you pick either this one, which I believe to be the correct sticker, which says it's pronounced GIF with a hard G like gift, or you could pick this one, which I believe to be the incorrect one, which says it's pronounced Jif like the peanut butter. You win, you pick either of those, and I'll send it to you in the mail. One winner, the first winner I'll pick, will win a copy of my book, Educational Duct Tape. I will sign it. I'll make a pun joke about a pear in it, I'm sure, in the signature, and then I'll send it in the mail to you. So when you watch this session, fill out that form on that site to enter to win one of those 2 giveaways. I'll wait a while until most people have finished watching the Pear Fair sessions and things like that before I pick those winners. So you got time, and then I'll email out to let people know who won. Before I get too deep into the session, I do want to give a shout out to slidesmania.com. The template that I'm using for my slides today is a Slidesmania template. I changed the colors a bit, but it's a Slidesmania template, and Paula at Slidesmania does fantastic work. Highly recommend it. So now we're going to jump into some different Pear Deck skills. So my goal here is to help you become an expert, right? To help you level up to expert skills in your use of Pear Deck. The assumption is that if you're coming into this session, you already know how to use Pear Deck, you already know how to set up your slides, you know how to add the different question types, but maybe you're looking to level up a little bit. So I'm going to help you level up. And the first thing I'm going to help you level up with is timers. One of my favorite skills in Pear Deck is using timers. So here on this slide, this is something I like to start class periods off with a lot. It's just a silly drawing slide. Gets kids into class, gets them to log into the Pear Deck quickly, gives them something fun to do, gets them involved. They sit down, they focus, they start working on something, but with a smile on their face. And then we look at it, build some class community by talking about the slides or their drawings that they made. So this is an example of one. Draw a picture of a ladybug named Elaine. Now, when I do one of these, some of my kids would gladly take 20 minutes making this a perfect picture. I don't have 20 minutes to give them. So I set a timer when I'm doing it. Now, I don't just set a timer. I set a timer that locks the Pear Deck slide when I want them to be done. So let's see what this looks like. So I started a Pear Deck session of this with my own kids, Cohen, Parker, and Beckett, had them all jump onto Pear Deck from their devices, and then I set a timer while they were drawing. So to start a timer, all I have to do is click and hold on this Add Timer button. It works in the teacher dashboard or in the projector view, which you can see both of them on my screen here. That button is there in both of them for me. Actually, it says Lock Screens. I hold down Lock Screens, click and hold, kind of drag up, and I see 3 options: 30 seconds, 1 minute, and 3 minutes. Now, as much as I love Pear Deck, there's always things that you wish were different in the things that you love. I wish my favorite chocolate peanut butter ice cream had a little more peanut butter in it, but I still love it. Pear Deck, I wish had other times that I could select here, but I still love Pear Deck. But that's okay. There's a way around it. So watch, let's say I want to give my kids about 2 minutes on this. So I'll select 1 minute, and then I can add more on later. I can't walk away from the computer. I need to be ready to add that time on when it gets down to 0, but I could still give them 2 minutes by doing it kind of piece by piece, or maybe starting at 3, and then when I get down to 2, switching it over to 1 or something like that. Again, I wish I could customize it in, but here, I'm here to make you an expert, not to fix everything that I think could be better in Pear Deck. I'm trying to make you an expert. So this is how you start a timer, and this is how you can add more later. Now, you've got to be careful because when it gets down to 0, it will lock their screen. So I always try to do it before it gets to 0. Otherwise, kids are like, you ruined my drawing. I was almost done. So I try to make that change before it hits to 0. So you can see, anyhow, while I'm in here, I could toggle between views. I can make it so I could see all of the kids' drawings at once. And speaking of which, look at them. These are adorable. I love these drawings. And again, when it hits 0, it's going to lock. So as it gets close to 0, I'll click on lock screens, hold and drag up and select a new time. So let's say I want about 2 minutes. I already gave them a minute and it's almost at 0. So I'll add another minute, and now they're getting about 2 minutes out of it. And they're going to beg for more time at the end anyhow, but sooner or later, we're going to have to stop here. And while it's going, I can click that button whenever I want to lock it. If I've given them 3 minutes and it turns out they only need 2.5 and I want to stop the timer half a minute early, I can just click on that button and go ahead and change it. Or I can add more if I need more. I can keep adding more as many times as needed. Kind of keeps them moving a little bit quicker, but then gives them more time so I'm not feeling stressed out. So you've got some flexibility there with that timer if you need it. How great are these Elaine, the ladybugs, by the way? These are amazing. If I want to tell the kids how great they are, I can use the feedback tool in here too. I don't know if you use the feedback tool, but I can click this button here, add some feedback. They could see it right then and there in the slide. It doesn't alert them that the feedback's there, but if you train them to look for it, they'll pay attention for it. And often I just tell the kids, hey, look at the note I made to you. And I kind of train the kids to get used to sometimes the notes are just a positive thing about their work, and other times it might be a correction. That way they don't feel like they're singled out when I'm calling to them they know their answer's wrong or something like that. So if I want to give some feedback, I'll put it in here. Then both you and the student can see that feedback later in Reflect and Review. So maybe you do this after the fact, and then they can see it when they go into Reflect and Review. Or you can go back and reflect on it yourself as the instructor when you go look at them and reflect and review, which we'll look at later when the session's all over. You'll notice here, by the way, that as soon as that timer got down to 0, the slides are locked. The students can no longer write on them. They still have them up on their screen, but now I've got the class's attention to talk about whatever the prompt was, maybe share answers, maybe review them, and I can unlock them again if I want to give them more time. Oftentimes I lock them, we talk about it, go over it, and then I unlock them for them to maybe change or improve their answers. By the way, I love doing activities like this and then showing them to the whole class. If a student maybe indicates that they don't want their art shown to the whole class, or maybe there's something inappropriate about the artwork. I've been teaching 8th graders most of my career, so it happens. I do have that hide responses button. I'm using it more often for kids who don't want their answers shown than I am for kids who put something that I don't want to show, but you never know with middle schoolers, right? Now let's next look at one of my other favorite expert tricks in Pear Deck, and that is when I do fill in the blank questions. Now, as you can see, this slide looks pretty simple, right? There are sentences, there are blanks in them. Those blanks are represented by these rectangular shapes with the curved corners. It's a draw slide, and my kids are drawing or using the typing tool right inside of those blanks. That's nothing spectacular. Now, what's different and what's special here is those rectangles that you see actually have the correct answers underneath them. So back here in Google Slides, you could see that if I delete this box here, there's the correct answer underneath it. And if I delete this box, there's the correct answer. And if I delete this box, there's the correct answer. And if I delete this box, there's the correct answer. And again, if I delete this box, there's the correct answer. Now, that seems, okay, Jake, why would you do that? Well, if I go to animate, I could select each of these boxes to fade out or to fly out, or fly out to left or to right or to bottom or to top. and I have them go away off the screen when I click the button. So what I've set up in here is that this box will fade out first on the click, then second will be this box, then third will be this box, then fourth will be that box, then fifth will be this box, and then I don't know what this is down here. That's an accident. I don't know why they have that fading back in. But I've got these 5 boxes fading out on click. So now, once my kids are all the way done putting in their answers and showing how little they know about their father, I don't know why they got so many wrong answers in here. I think they're being a little bit goofy when they put some of these answers in. When they're done, I can click on the slide, just like I would in Google Slides, in either of the 2 Pear Deck windows, either on the projector view, which is nice because I could do it like if I'm on a smartboard or something like that, or I could do it on the teacher dashboard. And on that view, the boxes will disappear. Now, I got to be honest, I have an accident in here, and when I actually recorded with the kids, I forgot to transition that first box to disappear. So just pretend it does. You could see the other 4 boxes disappearing on the click, and the correct answer appears. Now, it doesn't appear on the kids' screens, it just appears on my screen. So they need to direct their attention back up to my screen to see those answers populate in there. But it's neat, I think, that they're writing over top of the answer where a blank is, and then on my screen, the blanks go away. And the reason I showed this to somebody once, and they said, well, Jake, why not just put the right answers on the next slide? Well, that would work, but then how would the kids fix their answers if they're wrong? Right? So now I can unveil the answers one at a time, and my students could correct them on their screen as I go. So that's a neat trick that I do this for. Now, sometimes I don't do this. Sometimes I use the kids' answers to show off what's correct, and then they could fix based off of their classmates. So I'll share a kid's answers up on the screen. It's an even more powerful way to do it. But if I need to quickly go through a set of answers that I know are correct, I'll go through them from mine by creating these transitions and making blocks disappear off the screen. So what I did back in Slides was I wrote everything. My screen originally looked like this, and then I drew the rectangles over top of them. Then I set those transitions to make those rectangles disappear. When I clicked, they disappear and unveil the answers. Next, let's look at how to use that same kind of idea to do Mad Libs in Pear Deck. So I started this idea last school year. I had an idea that I wanted to introduce the units in my 8th grade science class by doing Mad Libs to this chapter description. So I wrote a paragraph describing each chapter. Then I wanted to sub out certain words in it, have them just make up nouns and verbs and adjectives and things like that to fill in. Then they read their silly paragraphs about what chapter 2 was about, and then I read the real chapter 2. It was a fun thing to do at the beginning of the year, and it also kind of introduced the concepts. Now, I planned on doing this in flippity.net, which is a great tool that has Mad Lib generator in it, but it didn't work at that time. Flippity was having some problems, so I needed a plan B, and I turned to Pear Deck. So what I did here in Pear Deck, if I jump back over to the Google Slides, is I wrote up my paragraph. I put in blanks where I wanted there to be blanks, or words if there was a real word. So here in this example, this is just a Mad Lib, so blanks are appropriate. But for my chapter ones that I was doing in my science class, the real word was actually there, and then I added in rectangles over top of them. Each of those rectangles, I typed into them noun, verb, person, place, thing, adjective, adverb, whatever I wanted to. I pushed the text down to the bottom of the cell using this, and I pushed them over to the right of the cell using that, and I made sure it was a nice small font so the students would have room to write in that region right there. Then what I did was I drew a rectangle that covered the whole area, and first it would look like this, and then I used control down or command down here on my Mac to put it underneath everything else, and every time you click it goes one layer deeper, and so I want to make it so that it's above the text but below all the boxes, so I want it to be right there. So now the kids can't even see the original text, so now they have no idea what the text is, they just have these blanks to write in. And next I've got to click on it and do that same transition click, make it fade out when I click off of it. I'm going to not make these fade out, but I could if I wanted to unveil some real words back there. I'm just going to have this part fade out when I click, and then my kids will be able to fill in the Mad Lib and read their paragraph out loud. Now, unfortunately, they won't see it on their screen, but they'll look back and forth from my screen to their screen and fill in the blanks. Now, when I did it with my own kids, I just read it out and they filled in the blanks as I read it. So I read the first sentence, which was once upon a time. They filled in the name, and they filled in the next name. Went out to dinner at, and they filled in the place. They filled in the noun. Appetizer for the main course. They filled in person one's name again, and so on. And we had a good time giggling about it. So next up, let's look at a draggable slide. When I realized after, I don't even know how many uses of draggable slides, that I could have multiple icons, that blew my mind. And then one day I was teaching, for those science teachers out there, how we order the layers of rock underneath us, even when there's faults and breaks and intrusions and stuff like that. And the rest of you are like, what are you talking about? But when I was doing that, I was having the kids drag numbers, number one, this happened first, this happened second, this happened third, this happened fourth, and so on, onto the screen. And I wanted to be able to look at just one, like, what did everybody think was first? Because otherwise I had a bunch of numbers on the screen. I was like, I wish there was a way to look at them just one at a time. Well, there is. And so then I realized, wow, not only can I have them put 5 different icons on the screen, I could look at each icon individually. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that. If you did, you might already be an expert, but I'm going to teach you now so that you can be an expert. So here in Google Slides, I've got my slide set up. I've got the 5 top songs from the Billboard's 2021 year-end Hot 100 chart. My kids are big music fans, so I thought they would enjoy this. But they're not in order. Those are the top 5, but not the order they're actually listed in. Notice, by the way, at the bottom, I also put in the description of what the Hot 100 is, because I never really understand what it is. So those notes are there for me to present from. And I do want to show you when we start presenting that I could still see those notes in Pear Deck. I'm not sure if you knew that. So to be an expert, you got to know that. So I'll show you that we could still see those notes while we're inside of Pear Deck. Okay, so let's make this a draggable slide. So I'm going to click on draggable. Draggable is one of the premium slides here. I'm going to switch over to a number slide. I often use this one here, but I'm going to go with a regular number 1 here. And then that'll show me the number 1 song. Well, what about number 2? And then, well, what about number 3? So I can just keep adding them in here. Now I'm limited to 5. So I can only have 5 icons to put on the screen. So 1 through 5. And I've sometimes done things where there's 6 on the screen. I just say leave the 6th without a label because we can only do 5. I can make them a little bit smaller if I want to, which I actually didn't when I did this with my own kids, but I wish I had so that they were a little bit smaller on the screen. One designer beware tip here is that they're always over there on the right side. So I often put my choices over towards the left so that I could see when the kid hasn't moved it yet. But you'll see there's one situation where one of my kids didn't move the number, and Pear Deck kind of doesn't count it as an answer because they didn't move it. So they do need to move it. So I like to make sure that they have to move it in order to put it in place. Here, my design's not so good because they could say that blinding lights is 3rd without even moving that 3 because it's already right there on top of it. Okay, so I'm going to update the slide, and now let's look at what this looks like actually in Pear Deck when I launch it and do it with my kids. So they put in their answers, they drag the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 where they think they belong. Then I bring up the answers. I want to look at them in the overlaid view, and I see 3 number 1s, 3 number 2s, 3 number 4s, 3 number 3s I skipped, and 3 number 5s on the screen in the locations that my kids have selected for them. That's a lot to look at. I only have 3 kids. Imagine a class of 25 or 30 kids. That's a lot of numbers on the screen. So down in the bottom right, I see a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I click on the 1, then I just see the 1s. And actually, I'm going to do it in the other order. We'll count down from 5 to 1. So I'll click on the 5. We'll see all the 5s. Click on the 4. We'll see all the 4s. Click on the 3. We'll see all the 3s. Click on the 2. We'll see all the 2s, and click on the 1 and we'll see all the 1s. Now the kids will still see all of their answers on their screen, but up on the projector or on my screen, I'll only see them one at a time. So what I like to do is go through what everybody chose to be 5th up on the screen, and then they could fix their answers on their screen. Okay, if this is 5th, I'll move that over. Then what's going to be 4th? I'll move this one over here, whatever they do. And then we'll look at 4th, and then we'll look at 3rd, and then we'll look at 2nd, and then we'll look at 1st. And again, a reminder, I can see the notes by clicking this notes button down here on the left side. So notes that you put into Google Slides also do show up in Pear Deck. So make use of that notes area. Now, Pear Deck puts their own notes down there to tell you what kind of slide it is, which can be useful to prompt you on that too. But you can also put in your own Google Slides notes just like you normally would in Slides. And by the way, as I go through here, notice that I could hover over the numbers and tell which number is which of my kids and see which kid put in what answers and look at each kid individually, or just hover over them and see them as we're looking at them, or see who maybe hasn't moved their icon. And you can see here on one of them, you'll see that I only see 2 numbers on the screen, and that's because Beckett didn't move his number. I think he felt like it was in the right place to begin with, so he didn't move it. So Pear Deck was saying this isn't an answer yet. Now, the next thing I want to look at here are examples of websites or web content that when you put in a website slide and try to embed it, it doesn't work. 9 times out of 10, that's not statistically, I haven't calculated that, but almost all of the time, there is a way to make those sites that don't seem to work. And the best example of that is YouTube. If you go to a YouTube video and you copy a link to that YouTube video and you come back into your Google Slides and enter a website slide and then paste in that link, your students are going to find that the link doesn't actually work. The video isn't actually in there. They can click on it, a new tab will open up and they can play that YouTube video, but it doesn't play right there in Pear Deck. And especially with your littles, but with your big kids too, you want to try to keep them in that window as much as possible and keep the distractions like the YouTube ads and the YouTube recommended videos for sure. Keep those distractions out. We want to keep them in the Pear Deck. So how do we make a YouTube play in there? Well, all you've got to do is after the .com, so youtube.com, you need to add /embed. That's it. youtube.com/embed, E-M-B-E-D, and then let the rest of the link stay, and then it'll work. The YouTube video will play right there inside of the Pear Deck. And for almost any tool that you want to embed in Pear Deck and then it doesn't work when you try the link the first way, there's almost always a way to get it to work. Not always, but almost always there's a way we could change that link. Google it, track it down, ask on Twitter, and if you still can't find it, send me a message. I'll make sure I put my contact information up at the end. And if you can't figure out how to get that one EdTech tool or website to fit into your Pear Deck, I'll try to help you and figure it out with you because I want to know too, and I want to help you. That's what I do. Right? Speaking of helping you, the very last expert thing I want to show you is reflect and review. You cannot be an expert, my made-up term, if you're not using reflect and review, and if you don't have your students using reflect and review. Reflection, that self-assessment, that metacognition is such that thinking about the thinking, right, is such a huge part of what our students should be doing, and that formative assessment is such a huge part of what we should be doing. And what I love about reflect and review is we've always been able to go back in, if you're in a premium version of Pear Deck that is, go back in and see all of your students' answers on the slides, but you've got to look at them all jumbled in together. You've got to go slide by slide and look at maybe all 100 of your students all at the same time. Well, what if you just want to see how Johnny's doing, or in my situation, how Beckett's doing? Well, I could click open reflect and review afterwards, and I can come back to this later too, and I can go through and see all of his answers on every slide. And then if I'm like, how did everybody else do on slide 6? Then when I switch students, it stays on that same slide in that view, which I love because then I could see each of them individually. But I like that I could look at just one student and see maybe are they done, or how are they doing? Do they understand things? What kinds of supports do I need to give them? Right? Reflect and review, super powerful for formative assessment and for our students to self-assess and reflect. And a really wonderful thing, if you have one of the Google for Education accounts or the Google Workspace for Education accounts that are of one of the paid tiers, and you have access to Google Classroom add-ons, and you have premium Pear Deck in order to have reflect and review, you could see reflect and review while you're inside of Google Classroom. So you could see just that one student's work while you're entering in a score or feedback for that one student. So really powerful for that feedback piece. So I hope you feel a little bit more like an expert after attending this. I hope that you feel good about what you've learned. I hope this has been beneficial to you, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Thank you for watching. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being an educator. I think it is so rad that you have one of the hardest jobs that there is for humans to have, and here you are spending extra time learning how to do even more and even better with educational technology to benefit your learners. It's just so awesome of you. So thank you for that, and thank you for watching. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out at my contact information that you see on the screen here. And don't forget, go to jakemiller.net/expert to enter to win one of those giveaways. I'll wait until I feel like everybody has watched the Pear Deck, Pear Fair stuff, and then I will pick a winner and send out an email. It might even be a few weeks later because I'm a busy guy too, just like you. But sooner or later, I'll pick those winners. Make sure you fill out that form so that you're entered to win. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a part of Pear Fair, and have a great day.
Pear Deck makes it easy for educators to transform lessons into powerful formative assessments and active learning experiences for every student, every day. And now you can access or create Pear Deck lessons directly from within Google Classroom. The Pear Deck for Google Classroom add-on enables teachers to share Pear Deck activities with students, review coursework, provide individualized feedback, and access Pear Deck's powerful teacher dashboard, all within an environment they know and love. Let's see how it works. First, create an assignment for your class in Google Classroom. Navigate to your add-on section and select Pear Deck for Google Classroom. Simple. Log into Pear Deck and select an existing lesson or create a new one. When your lesson is ready to be assigned to students, select Confirm Lesson. Then Assign. Once the lesson has been assigned, it will appear for your selected students on their dashboard. Students can join the session directly from Google Classroom with no code needed. Walk through the Pear Deck lesson and respond to each slide that includes an interactive prompt. When students have completed the Pear Deck lesson, they will be prompted to turn in their assignments, where you can seamlessly review and assess sessions material directly from within Google Classroom. With the Pear Deck for Google Classroom add-on, it's now easier than ever to deliver powerful learning moments for every student, every day.
Hello, my name is John Hodge, and I'm here to talk to you about how important you can be in the life of a child. The title of today's session is The Miracle Starts With You. We're going to talk about how important you can be in the life of a child and the impact you can have over time. Now, I apologize for the wardrobe, but we almost had to do this in an airport, so this is the best I can do today. Take it. Trust me, the content will not change. So let's roll forward with The Miracle Starts With You. Now, before we really get started, I work with an organization called Urban Learning and Leadership Center. We are a staff development and training organization housed in Hampton, Virginia. And we started as school system employees. That kind of makes us unique. We piloted our ideas in one high poverty school in Newport News, Virginia, and had some success, and that launched our company. What makes us unique is we have actually two major divisions. One side of the house does school improvement work inside schools with clients. The other side of the house works with mental health. We provide mental health support services for children and their families here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I don't have to tell you which side of the house has been more busy the last few years. Family services by far. We work primarily in these 9 states, and we have educational leaders and specialists who are ready to help. So that's pretty much our job. That's what I do. Our client list is pretty broad. We have large school districts like Clark County, where there are over 300,000 kids. We also have smaller school districts. I happen to work in one called Abington. I love the place. I work in the middle school, and one of the things I love about the middle school is they have a camel farm right across the street. It's pretty awesome, but really, really nice people. I just wanted you to have an idea of the scope of our services. What drives us, though, what keeps us at it every day, dedicated, passionate, determined, what really, really keeps us in the game is the fact that we know what happens to kids when they leave us unprepared. We know what the price is when kids are not ready for life after they leave us. And that really, really drives us because we want to make sure that kids leave our schools prepared, not just for the academic success, but for success in life. That's the whole point to us. What really drives me are kids like these two that you see on the screen. They're on the state line between Louisiana and Mississippi. It's one of the most impoverished areas I've ever seen. Some of the areas have been ravaged by weather. The research is overwhelming that if given the right support, these kids can make it. That poverty need not be a barrier to high student achievement, and that excites us. That keeps us going every single day because we know with the right support, children can make it. Now, I could tell you all about my dissertation. My dissertation is on a topic called resilience, how kids bounce back from adversity. I could bore you to death with all the research and theory, and you could join the other 5 people who read the thing. But I learned a long time ago from a mentor of mine that no significant learning takes place without a significant relationship. There has to be a connection between those who are receiving the information and those who are sharing it, or learning is less likely to take place. So instead of spewing out the research, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life, and we'll weave the research into the story. And hopefully at the end of this journey, you'll really understand how important you are in the life of a child, how kids can bounce back with your support, and how children in our country and abroad can make it if we believe that they can. So let's move forward. Let's start. Well, my name is John. Used to call me John growing up, and I had the best childhood. I would put my childhood up against anybody's in the world. It was awesome, man. If you were a football fan, you would have loved my area of the world. I grew up in a place called Greensboro, North Carolina. My next door neighbor was Desmond Gatson, All-American, South Carolina State. He was awesome. Jeff Davis was right around the corner, All-American from Clemson. We had all sorts of stars who grew up in our area. And we had love everywhere, right? There was love throughout the neighborhood. Do you remember those days when there was love throughout neighborhoods? I remember those days. I remember that you could actually go into somebody else's house, not your house. Like if you were outside playing and you didn't feel like going all the way back home, you could actually go into somebody else's house, ask for a drink, and they would fix it for you or ask you to fix it yourself. And back then, the #1 drink of all time was not Kool-Aid. It was Tang, baby, Tang. And you know why we drank Tang? If you drank enough Tang, you could go into outer space because that's what the astronauts drank. So we were little football playing astronauts. It was awesome. Everybody had a job. Every adult who wanted to find work in my area of the world could find work. It was easy. You could literally graduate from high school, get a job in the tobacco industry, and send your kids to college. That was real. We, in fact, aspired to that, right? 1970, our world changed. In 1970, we saw our last televised cigarette commercial. It was on Johnny Carson. Look it up. It signaled a change in the tobacco industry because they were admitting for the first time aggressively, publicly, that smoking could kill you. And this is something we knew back in the 40s and 50s. But this was more public, right? 1964, we saw the Surgeon General's warnings, and nobody really reads the small print, right? So the tobacco industry was more bold in informing people, and they started to get sued also. Sales declined, and the tobacco industry reacted by downsizing. So a lot of what we saw in Detroit with the automotive industry, it happened in North Carolina and South Carolina with agriculture. The tobacco industry declined, and they began to downsize. And that meant that a lot of the working adults that I knew growing up lost their jobs. And the real tragedy was that they couldn't find comparable work elsewhere because their skill sets didn't transfer. So a lot of the hardworking people I remember from my neighborhood when I was little left, other people moved in, then it got kind of weird. Like in our part of the city, people we didn't know would stand on corners, and other people we didn't know would drive up to those corners at night and give the guys on the corners money, and the guys on the corners would give them little bags, and we were so innocent we didn't know that was heroin in those bags. But it was. We're talking early 70s. That's what was happening. And so our mothers, in their infinite wisdom, told us to walk to and from school together. So that is what we did. And what you see on this slide are my best friends in the world and where we ended up. Now, we're not going to talk about all of these kids, but I'm going to talk about a couple. And I want you to think about the kids you were going to work with this year. My best friend in the world, friend number one. We actually used to call him Crazy Ernie. Don't tell him I told you that, but that's what we used to call him, right? He earned his name in second grade during show and tell. He comes to the school and he does a presentation on goldfish. He told us the feeding schedule, how long they would live, how much they cost, and he ended his presentation with the following statement, and he has not lived it down since. Crazy Ernie says to the entire class, "I talked to my goldfish and they talked back to me." He really said this, right? So friend number two, he crawls over to me. He says, "Hey, John, because that's what people call me back home. Hey, John, did that fool just say he can talk to fish?" Well, I said, "Yeah." And friend number two yells out, "Crazy Ernie," and the name stuck. Now, Ernie was a dreamer because he could see beyond his circumstances. And he grows up with a dream. He starts a business in the automotive industry. He's successful, and he made it. Now, the real tragedy is that not everybody from our neighborhood made it. Ernie and I graduate from college. I go on to the military. I become a part of the 7th Infantry Division. And back then, I kind of lost track of my friends because you actually had to write to people back then. I know I'm old as dirt, but we'll get over that too. But I decided to go back home and find my boy, number one, Crazy E. And I go to his home. His mom tells me where to find him. And I go to the part of the city where she says I could find him. And I see that he now owns a car dealership. Same kid from my street, same kid from my neighborhood, Blueford Elementary School, Dudley Senior High School. That same guy now owned a car dealership, right? Now, one of our other neighbors, friend number 4, didn't have such a wonderful outcome. He ends up shot and dead and dies in a puddle of his own blood in a parking lot. That's friend number 4. Friend number 1 ends up with a parking lot full of cars. And after going to that funeral of friend number 4, I'm asking, well, how does it happen? Because if you had asked us in 5th grade who the smartest kid was on this slide, we would have said easily, friend number 4. It wasn't even close. But he ends up dead. And Ernie ends up a businessman. And I end up an educator. Friend number 2 ends up a doctor. A doctor. These are some pretty drastic results. Very, very different. And I always wondered, like, well, what happened to friend number 4? made his outcome so tragic, right? And it was something I kept in my mind. I eventually left the military, became a teacher, started teaching reading in my old city, but I never forgot about friend number 4 because he was so smart. I leave North Carolina, move to Virginia, things are going well. And it's at that point, my mother and my sisters decided to get me married. It was a blind date that eventually turned into a wedding. And I remember having to drive 5 hours to get to this young lady's house. And when I was on my way, on my drive, I gotta admit to you, I felt like this guy. Oh, heck no, I'm not doing this. But I actually go to the home. I meet Rochelle. Yes, my mom has great taste. So we end up falling in love, and a few years later, we get married. Now, I am not a bachelor party guy. That's not my style, right? I wanted a cookout. You might call it a barbecue. I wanted you to be able to come by the house and have a good time. Let's talk about old times and get ready for my next move, right? But I want you to remember friend number 2. Before I finish, I want you to remember friend number 2. Friend number 2 graduated from high school with a 4.2 grade point average, but in the second grade, he could not read. Yet friend number 2 becomes a doctor. He couldn't read in the second grade. Wow. All right. So we're at my pre-marriage gathering. I'll call it that, not a bachelor party. And we're drinking Tang. We're having a really good time drinking Tang. And little Paul, I'll tell you his name, friend number 2 stands up and he says, "Hey, John, tell me something. People actually pay you to talk. That's your job. I mean, people actually pay you to speak." And I had a little bit of Tang in me, so I didn't quite know how to take this. So I tried to give him my resume. He said, no, you're taking it the wrong way. But he said, "Look, man, when we were little, I've never heard you talk. I don't even remember how your voice sounds. You never talked." He says, "Didn't you stutter or something?" Well, yeah. But here's what was happening that night, and it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Here was what was happening. A boy who could not read, a doctor, is asking a boy who could not speak, "How did we get here? What was that intervening variable? What made the difference? They're calling you doctor and they're calling me doctor. How did we get here? What was it?" And the answer is consistent with the resilience research. It should scare you to death and motivate you at the same time, because it's true for all kids. If they are lucky enough to get the right one, the obstacles in front of them, the risk factors don't matter as much. Here's what we had in common, little Paul and I. Every little boy you see on this screen had the same elementary school teacher, Miss Geraldine Dawson. And she didn't care what the teacher who had you last year said about you. And she didn't care what your street or your neighborhood looked like. She believed that you could make it, and she treated you like you could. That was the difference for us. The resilience literature is overwhelming, that the entire trajectory of a child's life can be changed through the actions of one caring adult, one caring person. And really, your job title really doesn't matter. If you are willing to act, you care enough to act, you can make a difference. And if Miss Dawson's story inspires you, we just published a book last month. Her story is in it. We've changed the names a bit just to, make sure we're anonymous. But if you like that story, we'd like to have you read the book and learn more about it. The resilience literature, though, to me, started with Werner and Smith. They actually followed over 500 kids for over 30 years. That's a longitudinal study. And what they found was that if given the right support, risk factors don't matter as much. John Hattie talks to us about effect size. And put simply, effect size simply means impact. Like if we're trying to make this super simple, right? So if we're talking effect size simply means impact. So if we were thinking about the effect of poverty on student achievement, we know that poverty has an effect size of negative 0.12. Negative 0.12. This means that poverty can make high student achievement more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. That's a fact. So if you're working with impoverished kids, you should know that poverty might make high student achievement a little more challenging if we don't adjust our instruction and our tools. Now, Jensen gives us an effect size scale, kind of like his descriptor, so I use it, right? And long story short, we're ranging from a 0.0 to 2.0 range, totally. Now, if you go 0.0 to 0.2, the effect is unclear. 0.2 to 0.4, the effect is small. 0.4 to 0.6 is very strong. And 0.6 to 2.0, the effect or the impact is extreme, right? We want what we do to have an extreme impact on student achievement. So, what might be the effect of a teacher or a caring adult on student achievement? Well, what might it be? In other words, where would you put it on this scale? Where would you put it on this scale? Well, we know that the effect of a teacher or a caring adult is 0.98. And 0.98 is extreme. The conclusion is that poverty need not be a barrier to high student achievement. Kids can make it with the right support. We can actually override some of the risk factors that we see in their lives. What about kids' disposition, like how they feel about being in school? Do they feel good about being around us, welcomed, cared for when they come to school, right? Why is that important? Well, a student's disposition, according to Hattie, has an effect size of 0.61. And we know from our scale, 0.61 is extreme, right? If they just feel good about being here. And we know if they feel good about being in school, they're more likely to show up. And they're more likely to be receptive to the wonderful instructional tools that we're using if they do show up. So this is all great, great news. So keep those things in mind. We actually can override a lot of the risk factors that kids are faced. But the title of today's session kind of bothers me the older I get, right? When I look back on it, right? Because when we talk about miracles, we're talking about like a one-off. We're talking about something that's rare, that hardly ever happens. We don't need one-offs in public education. Our job, and what Pear Deck's trying to do, our job is to make the best of what we do so systemic that it does not matter which teacher you get. We want to make what we consider miraculous to be normal, that kids can make it regardless of circumstances. That is our job, right? Now, I want us to expand the miracle because we've got to make sure that all of our teachers have the knowledge, the skills, and the beliefs, plus the tools to make success more likely. And to me, that's what Pear Deck is trying to do. They're trying to make sure that teachers have the tools to be successful. And if we do it, if we make the best of what we do so systemic that it doesn't matter who you get, more kids can make it. Now, given what we're going through as a society today, we know we have to be more holistic, right? So a really basic holistic approach to educating kids is something that my organization calls SAME. And it's not a product, it's just a way of going about helping kids, right? We say that if you're going to achieve and sustain excellence in a school, you have to address what we call the social environment within that school. And the social environment deals with how members of the school community behave. And when we talk behavior, we're not talking about just kids, we're talking about the adults too, because children model what they see. They model what they see. So the social environment deals with behavior. The academic environment deals with teaching and learning, how members of the school community engage in teaching and learning, and that's where you're using all your instructional strategies and your instructional tools. That's the academic environment. Then there's the moral environment. The moral environment deals with what members of the school community believe. You have to believe that children can be successful regardless of their circumstances. And that belief system is crucial because our beliefs really, really drive what they do or what we do. Our beliefs drive what we do. But what really makes this and other approaches work is something that we call distributed leadership. Distributed leadership means that all of the kids belong to all of us. We're not dividing things up by subject area and grade level and department. No. We work together. Every kid in this building belongs to all of us. It's called distributed leadership. We're working together to make sure that kids can make it. And when we do work together, what we learn from Hattie is that combined efficacy. We all think that we've got the skills to make it happen for kids and that the kids can make it. When that happens, the effect size is 1.57. That is beyond extreme. That's crazy great, right? That's awesome. That's a miracle. Us working together in some places, guys, I'm telling you, it's a miracle. What we should work together. We should make it a way of doing business. Because we know when we do, our effect size goes up to 1.57. All right, so let's just talk about results. I know that is really important, especially to our leaders, and they should be, right? We should be able to quantify our results. The approach that I talked about, the things that I talked about in our video today were first piloted in Newport News, Virginia in a high poverty school. Those are our demographics. So very high poverty, high minority school, K through 8 at the time. They've gone on to do bigger and better things since I left, but I was there for quite some time. And it was a struggle to get there, but we did achieve some pretty fantastic results. In year 5, on our state assessment, we did quite well. Now, you might not know this. Well, some of you do. Every state has their own testing system, and I promise you I'm not making up this fact. The Virginia testing system is called, and trust me, it's not a joke, it's called SOL. I mean, really, I don't know who came up with that name, but among other possible interpretations, SOL means Standards of Learning. And on our Standards of Learning assessment, year 5, these are the results we achieved. So I'm here to tell you that kids can make it, they can be successful if supported. And I'm not talking about a theory, I'm talking about something I've lived. So if I were to change this presentation at all, I'd change the title. The miracle doesn't start with you, the individual. The miracle starts with us. Go make a difference for kids this year. I wish you the best of luck. My name is John Hodge, and I appreciate spending time with you today. Take care.
Educators, thank you for joining us at Pear Fair, and thank you to our incredible speakers for sharing their inspiring messages and awesome new tips. I hope you had as much fun at Pear Fair as I did.
It's finally the moment you've been waiting for, to get a sneak preview into Project Pear. Project Pear is a gamified learning experience like no other, headed to classrooms soon. Head to projectpear.com to be the first to learn more, and keep watching for a sneak preview of this awesome new tool.
Having them be on teams and having them be able to be kind of guided by other people, it really helps the students who do struggle sometimes have the confidence to be like, okay, it's not just all on me. I can kind of rely on, but also have the opportunity to show what I know.
was interesting because one of the students wears a hijab to class, and their whole countenance changed when they saw that there was a hijab there. They were like, "That looks like me." And I'm like, "Yeah, isn't that awesome? That's the goal." You don't want kids to grow up and never see something that looks like them. And so representation, even in silly things like avatars, matters. I think sometimes we focus a lot on tools, but it's the skills. And I like that it is a skill-oriented tool as opposed to just a tool to add to your arsenal. If I'm measuring growth, right, and mastery, I want to look at from the beginning to the end, when did they learn? What was the sticking point, right? I think that's a huge component that will help with best practices.
I feel like I like to edutain, and this goes right in line with how I want class to run, especially with using technology, and kids love it. They're very excited to use it, so I feel like anything that they can get them excited about learning a language, I'm on board. So.
I want to do another one. Wait.